Great. All right, we are now recording. All right. So how was I? Let's see here. Let me go here, and first let me. I keep very minimal slides so people can listen to this on MP3. Which a lot of people like to do. And didn't that sound plausible? Isn't that a great excuse for me not doing much in the way of slides? Sounded believable, right? It's all for you guys, so you can listen to it on MP3s. Whoopies. Okay. So the question that we're addressing, and I'll go back to the Facebook group probably in a second, but it's not really that I'm about mindset or whatever. There's really one question, right, that is worth really focusing on and asking in life, and then until you deal with that question, then other things are really a distraction. Like you pretty much just want to keep yourself breathing until you can properly address the central question and some related questions. Of course, this isn't how people actually operate, right? But how people actually operate will come to get more and more removed from that as we over time. But it only makes sense to address the basic fundamental question, and other stuff doesn't really matter until you do. And then once you get it straight, then the details are fun and delicious, and you can deal with life, and it's totally different and easy and full of success, and then you can really properly help other people and so forth. So just a little refresh there. So the question is, it exists independent of myself. It's not the question because I say it is. I thought that maybe there we go. Sometimes it just gets stuck, so that's why I refreshed it, and that was right. Hey guys, there we go. Brian posted Apotheosis. So the question that we address what the heck? Oh, Facebook does this. The question that we address when I'm talking is again, there's really just one to be discovered, right? And that is the question of success. Same as the question of happiness, right? Same as there's a lot of ways to phrase it. How do you make the right decisions? How do you get the most goodness out of life for yourself, and then you realize for other people as well? These are all the same question, basically, just different logical things in the same question. People might say, well, you define success differently. Well, great. So then what would be success? What leads to real happiness or whatever? Or what are the results? How do we figure out what results to go for and then how to get them? Again, I'm just rephrasing the same question, right? What results to go for or how to get them? Even how do we know what's true? The question of epistemology is the same type of question, right? It's at least just one step logically related, one step removed or whatever, to this basic question. And pursuing anything else past survival is really a waste of time, and it's barking up the wrong tree until you get this straight. Of course, people ignore that completely, but it's so something's going on. And then that leads us to a very similarly related question, is why on earth are people, what's blocking us from just thinking accurately? Why are there such massive errors in our thinking, either that are universal, where why isn't it the case that everyone is in a clear, pretty much correct and efficient manner going after the same question and working on it together? Why, when people get together for dinner or hanging out, why isn't it dead obvious that that's the only question they should be working on together? And if they don't know how to work on it, then one logical question removed would be, well, figuring out how to work on it, right? Again, how do I know what's true? How do I think clearly, right? Everything else is an obvious waste of time if you think clearly about it, right? Then because you're just going to have more fun. Or what's the point of fun? To be happy, right? I mean, you're just going to have more good stuff in life if you figure out how good stuff works, right? What stuff leads to good, and then how to achieve it, right? What results to go for, as I said, and how to get there. So that's what we deal with in Law of Implication, right? The Law of Implication itself is a term I coined, or a brand name, you can call it, whatever. The website was open, and it's kind of catchy and cool, and it kind of is related to this idea. The Law of Implication is the idea that it's one one angle on addressing the answer to the question, which is you focus on what you can actually know, and you build from there, and you don't stop with that. But when I say that, it doesn't have a whole lot of meaning. To people, it has plenty, and we've changed a lot of lives. We've had lots of success and progress, but there's still a way that I wanted to get further and bridge things even better. So it's regarding addressing that question. Then when I say this is the apotheosis, I changed it from rigging the game to crushing the game now, is that I am there's a way that pretty much nailed the block that that is going to open everything else up, given everything else that I've explained and I'm able to explain and that I understand. So that's the question, right? And as I explain that, right, I give you my little quick spiel on, can you see how it's a little bit odd that people aren't focused on that question? Why is it that people just wave their hand at it and basically don't bother with it, right? Why is it that, of course, if I were to announce that I had the answer to that question, then that would be mostly surprising to people, especially if they didn't know me, right? They would find a way to marginalize what I was saying, right? That I'm one of a bazillion people claiming to have the answer to it, that, the other thing. But why aren't people working on it? And that in and of itself is very odd. All right, so let's go to the next slide here. Crushing it already, absolutely. By the way, Elizabeth, great to have you on here, and I agree with you about your different hashtag. I wasn't trying to say that you needed to put final level hashtag. I don't work that way. I don't try to tell you what to hashtag. You hashtag whatever the heck you want, as you did, and I agree with that. Okay, so that was in the project simulation group. All right, so let's go on here. All right, so now what it's going to look like if we understand the answer to the question is just constant crushing it, right? Like beyond belief, right? Where we're basically just happy there's only goodness, right? If there's bad stuff still, then we haven't solved it quite yet. Or perhaps we've gotten on the way to solving it, but we haven't helped enough other people, figure it out yet, whatever. But I think that it's not very controversial to say that people wouldn't say that they fully understand the basic question of success and happiness and how to just do it consistently, clearly, and so forth. The answer to whatever the key to success is would have to, for starters, would have to involve breaking some sort of bottlenecks, right, on the way to success, happiness, knowing how to get the results you want, knowing what results. So suppose you were to start fresh. The webinar's over, and you go get some coffee, and you think, okay, well, what goals do I want to go after in life, and then how do I achieve them, right? If you were just going to ask that type of question, then if you don't immediately know how to go about doing that, then what has to be going on is there's something bottlenecking you, right? There's something that's not. Or if there's a specific result that you want, right, and you're not completely certain that you're getting, or not even certain, but if you don't have full understanding of how to get there, or if you haven't already gotten it, or if you're struggling at all, then it is easier to see, just putting it this way, then there's some bottleneck, right? And so the key to success would be if you could just break all the bottlenecks on the way to what you want, then especially if you realize that if you could do that, then the other thing you would want is to know what you want, right? Like if you could get anything you wish, then the first thing you'd want to wish for is to wish for the right things, right? Like, so you obviously want to know what results to shoot for, what goals are actually going to lead to goodness for you and for others, and then be able to achieve them, right? Those two things. So the key then to that would be to be able to break the bottlenecks, which means that the key wouldn't just involve breaking this bottleneck or the other bottleneck, but it would then mean that you would need a consistent way or method or process where you could use it and it would keep working to break the bottlenecks on the way to the results or success or happiness, right? If you had that key, right, if you could wave your hand or do something that you knew how to do and get through any obstacle, get through any, a bottleneck is where the progress isn't really happening, right? Then you can obviously get to your result, right? You just zoom right to it. The only reason you wouldn't, And the other bottleneck, or when I say zoom to it, if you didn't know the direction to zoom to, that would be where you're stuck in that case. So if you could just wave your hand and find out which direction to go, and then wave your hand and nothing's in your way, then you just get it, right? Given that there's things that you want that you don't have, and that you aren't just 100% on your way to getting them necessarily, then that you'd be lacking that, right? So again, the answer is going to look like something that, and this won't be exactly the same. This will all relate to everything I've talked about before, but I've previously called something the master key that had to do with talking about standards and norms and how they acted kind of like super goals and so forth. But when I say master key, don't mean exactly that right now. But if you had a master key or a magic wand or whatever, it would. Anyway, I think that point mainly got made. The answer will look like something that is a system for breaking bottlenecks and or finding the answers you need on the way to getting the result that you want, right? So it would be a master bottleneck discoverer and breaker, right? Does that make sense so far? How are we doing with that, right? A master bottleneck breaker would be either the answer or real close to the answer. Megan, are you taking notes? There we go. Breaking the bottleneck. There we go. Okay, good. Oops, probably need another refresh. Or sometimes not that you need to type stuff every second, but sometimes I also just kind of stun people into silence a little bit. All right. Excellent. Good. I'm glad I read your mind today, Rebecca. So it's going to look like a bottleneck breaker. Now, there's one more logical step we can do, and that is that perhaps the bottleneck breaker is available to us, except that there's a block between us and that bottleneck breaker. So whatever the bottleneck is between us and that bottleneck breaker would be the final issue, right? We would need to get through whatever obstacle is between us, or if it's invisible, we need to find a way to see that bottleneck breaker, that process, that method, that whatever it might be, that we're going to be able to then use to break specific bottlenecks, right? Like if you don't feel motivated, or if you need to have a creative breakthrough, or if you need to figure out where to persevere, right? The problem with just the general idea, the general answer to success that's out there is very often something to do with perseverance, right? But the problem with perseverance is it boils down to spending resources, right? I mean, if I say don't give up, persevere, I'm telling you, right? Life is. You've heard me in other places if you've listened talk about strategy, and it's how it relates to alternative use of resources. And the problem with just saying keep at it, don't give up, it's just saying, or if I were to say just focus, right? Then just focus is like saying just spend. Does that make sense? Because focus is a resource that's limited in any moment, at least in any particular day. It's limited. Overall, in your entire existence, it might not be, but it's for now. It's limited, right, for a day. So if we were to say just focus, just persevere, just don't give up, then really that amounts to telling you to spend resources without examining alternative use, right? Because if I say just don't give up, it means keep doing that, which means keep pouring resources like focus, money, effort, whatever, into that. But I haven't even taught. But if I say that without reference to whatever else you could be pouring your resource into, then I've definitely not given you good advice, because it hasn't involved alternative use, which means I'm not doing good strategy. So I'm being non-strategic if I just tell you, you got to focus, you got to persevere, and that sort of thing. You got to be motivated, blah, blah, blah. All right. It's not that those things are worthless, but they can't be the whole picture, because they don't even address alternative use of resources. And they also don't address a massive problem that we have, which is that all sorts of times, and we can see this especially in others, people think that they're right when they're wrong. So like when someone says just draw up a business plan, or just draw up a plan and draw out the steps, right? And then like you just need to have like a big goal, and then you plan out the steps. Well, that would work if we never screwed up. if we never made bad decisions. If there were no bottlenecks or obstacles, right? We just basically write out the steps to our goal and follow them. Then you're cheating. You're defining the situation as there's basically all the bottlenecks that actually occur in life just magically don't exist, and you just follow a bunch of steps to your goal, right? And then people wonder what goes wrong, right? In actual life, there's bottlenecks, and there's the very close to, if not the fundamental bottleneck, is that we screw up and we don't even realize we're doing it a lot, and so we make bad decisions sometimes. And so if you're going to, there's no point in trying to plan until you figure out how to think clearly in the first place, right? Right now, people are doing a horrendous job planning out their lives. And there's one simple proof for that. It's not going to feel totally like a proof, but it will the more I show you what I'm showing you today. But all you should need is this one thing, and it should prove to you that people haven't even the slightest grasp of clear thinking or strategic planning. And that is that if they had it, they would be focused on this one question in an effective way, and they wouldn't be doing other stuff, basically, right? Except you can keep yourself alive to do it, right? But then that's all part of answering the question, is keeping yourself alive to do it. Good, excellent, Jose, excellent. So there's something seriously lacking. But that's all good because we're getting to the denouement here, the apotheosis. So good, we covered this slide, right? If there's a bottleneck or block on the way of getting to our bottleneck breaker, or if it's invisible, something's making it invisible so we're not seeing it, and then if we had a way to make it visible, then we could see the bottleneck breaker and then use it, and then we would use it to break all the bottlenecks on the way to our results, including figuring out what results to go for, and so forth. So what we have today, that will take things to the final level, given all the other stuff that I know and that I've shared and that I'll continue to share, is this. Now, I have to put words to this, and it's going to take a little bit of explaining. It's not that I'm necessarily going to give you one phrase, and that is the thing, right? So it's not that looking at this slide will instantly cause all the meaning that I have to pop into your head. But we get started. But this is going to be really cool, trust me. It's going to be understandable, and probably very likely very hard hitting, pretty fast. Okay. The block that we're running into. Because the key to success, I've already said a bazillion times, which is to seek understanding, to measure progress by seeking understanding, that all you ever need to do at all times, essentially, to achieve what you're trying to achieve and to figure out is to seek understanding of what's true, good, and important. But there is something obfuscating that, or making what my meaning of that invisible, or partially or wholly invisible. And finally, I have that for you. So I have a way to make it visible for you. And what's obscuring it is, to whatever degree you're assigning value to what I'm going to call fabricated certainty. All right? And again, me saying this phrase isn't going to bring all the meaning I have intended for you to mind, but it's a start. I have previously said that our brain, basically, our mind as well, there's a lot of ways to put this. It fills in meaning for us. It makes us feel certain. It makes the world feel real and hard and tangible. And the word real itself, it has a meaning of like non-arbitrary, in other words, foundational, right? Foundational and non-arbitrary are like antonyms, right? Opposites. I previously stated that our mind is like a can be thought of usefully as a goal-seeking mechanism. I'm going to add to that now, and I'm going to say that it's not that it seeks certainty, it basically fabricates certainty. Our brain is like a certainty-seeking mechanism, but it's a mechanism for fabricating certainty, creating certainty like out of kind of thin air, so to speak. And it doesn't look like thin air, but because it creates it out of something, but that something itself is kind of made out of nothing. Let me jump straight into an illustration in one of my kind of go-to illustrations because it's so easy to see, which is with dating. All right. But this is all the time, everywhere. People are looking to fabricate certainty. Let me right before dating. Let me give you another, like a business example of when I talk about why looking at like monthly income, or in my various orientation videos, I talk about measuring, like I'm warning you about measuring progress by results. All right. People like to get results so they can feel confident, right? And so they can feel certain, right? What you're going to come to understand, what we need to do is see why our mind is doing this and what the benefit is. But then we need to understand how to interact with the fact that our mind is doing this. And life, or everything else will be available to you once you're not getting blocked by fabricated certainty seeming to have value. And I'll get to the dating illustration in a second. One other thing is everything I talked about the goal to like yourself, what people refer to as ego. Sometimes we've seen other people where they really have a particular ego problem and it's obvious. But we all spend so much and defend so much to believe that we're good already good, intelligent. We meet various standards that are important, moral, like we're, that's what I mean by good, right? Moral, which also means we have to be part of. I've talked so much, and the master key that I've talked about in the past, with norms and standards, where our mind is constantly looking around to try to see what's normal and how things should, like what benchmarks we should hit to be a good person, to be a competent person, to be a smart person, an attractive person. That's all part of fabricating certainty. When I've talked about successive approximation in the past, right? And I'm not saying to stop doing it. It's actually weirdly different. But the fabricated part of it needs to become valueless. And again, I'll just keep explaining, and it'll come together. Even now, you might see, okay, and I'm still getting the dating illustration in a second, but one of the things that we've run into with each other sometimes is that you want certainty faster, and what people will do sometimes is they will compare the clarity or certainty or feeling of understanding they get when I'm talking, and they'll measure it against the certainty they get from learning some other stuff. And they feel like something's wrong, like that, hey, wouldn't it be faster if I could just find ways to help you get closure faster, but it amounts to fabricated certainty, and implicitly they're assigning value to, they want to get that feeling sometimes, right? You want to get that feeling of like, yeah, I got it, right? So that feeling of like eureka, or that feeling of grasping, that feeling of like, yeah, I see it, I feel it. That needs to get to where it's valueless to you, where that's not where you're looking. And there's a simple illustration of that, which I'll do first, and then I'll get to the dating one. If there was, let's say there was a site that reported on what the weather was going to be tomorrow, and they said, here's how we do it. We roll dice. It has absolutely nothing to do with any meteorology or anything. We roll dice, and we compare it with a chart that we made, and based on that result, we report what the temperature and whether it's going to rain and so forth, right? Would there be any value, if you were to try to think about how to dress for today or the next day or whatever, would there be any value in looking there, right? Now, what if every other day, but you don't know which day, they post one based on real meteorology, which of course can be wrong, but it has value, right? The weather report is not totally off. It's pretty close these days, in many cases. So you wouldn't know. So if every other day they post that, every other day they roll the dice, then if you had nothing else to rely on, then you might as well use that website, right? If you had no other possible way and you had to choose to dress something or to whether take an umbrella or whatever, then it actually does make sense to rely on that website. And this is going to illustrate the value in our brain doing this in a sense. But relative to something, as soon as you have something, a different way of going about things, then you're going to want to use that, right? You're not going to want to assign value to a website like that, even if half the time, but you didn't know when they were giving you the correct report. And even that has there's some things that are parallel about that in our mind, and there's some things that aren't. But at least that just starts to fill things in, or starts to give us something. Okay, let's do the dating illustration. People destroy themselves when they're involved with dating, going after certainty, right? Going after fabricated certainty. When the ideal way to act on a date is basically you're trying to understand the other person, and you're trying to understand how you and the other person fit together, which means also understanding a bit of yourself and also understanding the interaction between the two of you, right? And then just in addition to understanding, you're just kind of you're not clouded so that you can just kind of react in the moment, be kind of fun, whatever, right? If you're trying to fabricate certainty that you're an attractive person, which plays a large role in the reality of people dating a lot of times, right? To get approval, to get validation, and that sort of thing. Or to just get them well, it boils down to validation anyway, but wanting to feel certain, or that they're gonna jump into bed with you or whatever, and get feedback that you're on the way to that and so forth. That's generally going to be counterproductive. Which also has to do with if someone goes into a date certain that they want to date that person. Sorry, this is a while ago. Someone asked me if the sound is off, but now I'm sure it's not, or people have been talking to me would have told me. So or the idea of one-itis, right? Like if someone gets hung up on one particular person where it's not necessarily a good match, right? Or at least the other person, if in the other person's mind it's not a good match, then it's not a good match, right? So going in like certain you want the person to sleep with you, or that you want the person to date you, including, and this same, all my dating analogies apply pretty closely, not exactly, but there's a lot in them for client conversion, client consultant, getting clients, right? If you go in feeling certain that you want to make the sale, then you're going to come across, that's a fabricated certainty. How could you know that you want someone else to be your client? Because whether it's going to be a good client consultant relationship lies in the interaction between the two of you, right? Or the relationship between the two of you, their needs, your competence, their expectations, like what they, right? Their needs and wants, your needs and wants, your abilities, and so forth, right? You see, so just like with dating, it lies in the intersection. Now, as opposed to dating, it might be that 90% of the pool of potential clients are people that you would want to have, right, as clients at any particular time, point in your career. That might change. It might become only 30%, or it might already just start out at 60% or whatever. But still, if you go in to a sale with a fabricated certainty that you want them, that you want to make the sale, that's going to interfere with your ability to sell generally. Another huge thing that you're going to get out of all of this, I'm talking about this whole idea, and then the rest that flows from it, is this is all going to relate to conversion, because you're going to, by understanding your own mind, and not just your mind, but your conscious interaction with your mind and everything related to this fundamental question, you're going to understand how other people's minds work, because the fundamental way that minds work is the same across the board. So people have different personalities, different ideas in their head, but the processing is similar, and especially until and unless they add ideas about the fundamental processing. Most people don't think deeply about their process for thinking, making decisions, and so forth, their epistemology. Until and unless someone does that, then people are extraordinarily predictable in terms of process. The details aren't very predictable based on people's environment, and obviously people are different individuals. but there's an underlying process that's extremely similar and predictable. And understanding how badly people want certainty and how much they're willing to they're willing to settle for BS, fabricated certainty, and how that totally satisfies them. And not only does it satisfy them, but it's kind of like all they'll tolerate, right? It's like all they want. Understanding that is going to take you to a very different level when it comes to selling as well. So instead of fighting against this or breaking yourself against it, you will use it, right? I mean, when I say use it, it has nothing to do with manipulating or taking advantage. You obviously, quote unquote, use the world as it exists, right? You can only break yourself against the world as it exists. It's like gravity, right? You don't break the law of gravity by jumping off a building, right? You're going to follow the law of gravity right down to the pavement, right? So if this is how your potential client's mind is working, you either break yourself against it or you go with it. Now, you can always be looking to have more goodness for yourself and others. So anything that you take advantage of or harness or use can be harnessed towards good if you understand how to understand about good and so forth. So that's a separate thing. But understanding how the mind works in terms of process, and because it is massive. See, people think that other people are different. So, of course, people sometimes conclude that people are the same, various groups or types of people, or men or women or whatever. But people's minds seem hard to understand when you're looking at certain surface details and differences. But when you understand process, the way we can talk about it and things I can show you and things I have shown you, then those are extraordinarily the same with other people, and it's incredible understanding that, because then the process can be predictable. Like a kind of a whimsical illustration of what I mean by the process being predictable is that if you put stuff into a juicer, then depending on what you put into it, what vegetables or fruits, that's going to affect what comes out. But if you still know that it's going to get juiced, right? So you might not know the details of what's going to go in or come out of someone's mind, but if you know the processing that happens in between, that's still going to give you a huge leg up in helping them and working with them and so forth, or avoiding bad relationships. So fabricated certainty is blocking and screwing you up. It's the fundamental block that you're dealing with in life. And without that block, then I've already basically shown you, right, in alchemy and other things, and I'll continue, and it'll be also easy for me to go back through it with you in the future. But the whole block is going to be assigning value, and I don't think I fully explained this yet. Don't worry. But without this block, everything's going to be different, radically different, and you're going to start seeing how your life is basically, and your resources are spent hugely in pursuit of this. And it's not just that it wastes resources, but it constantly takes you in the wrong direction. Just like someone who's dating, and you show them, look at all the ways that that fabricated certainty is getting in the way of effectively dating, where you're effectively, and same thing with trying to get clients. When you stop trying to gain confidence by seeing results, when it stops being all about having certainty that you're going to succeed. And the reason this is invisible is it's pervasive. It would be like if you put on like, I don't know, like a red prism lenses on an infant from birth, and if that tinted the world red, and then that was how I don't know how that works exactly physically, but let's just stipulate that. Let's just stipulate that that's possible and that's how it would work. Then in one sense, the red would be invisible, right, to the person. It would always be tinting everything at all times, and therefore be invisible. This is so close to you, so part of how you live. It's like breathing or water to a fish, whatever. That it's so integral to how you interact with the world. But it blocks you. And remember I said that we know something's really off about people. overall, even the ones we think are smart and good strategists and successful and so forth, because they should be effectively going after the question of success and not redefining success just to um, at some point, if you're going after success and you're going after the question of success, if you don't come to the question of epistemology, something's deeply wrong. The question of epistemology is, how do I know what's true, right? Because achieving goals doesn't do anything for you if you can't figure out. Obviously, people achieve goals and they stay on a treadmill, or it doesn't make them happy overall, or it gives them a bit of happiness, but overall they still fail at other things, or they feel unhappy sometimes, or they get frustrated on the way to it, right? We're trying to be happy and have everyone else be happy, obviously, if you stop to think about it. And we're so ineffective at that compared to full happiness. And again, one angle on the basic bottleneck is that things seem so true. We feel so certain of things that are false, and we feel certain in a way that satisfies us, where we don't even go to figure out it. And people will actually constantly check their feeling of certainty about it. You'll again, if you look for this, you'll see yourself doing this constantly, and you'll certainly see other people doing it. They'll check their feeling of certainty regarding decisions, regarding what they're going after, whether they should keep doing something, whether something's working, when in fact, if you think about whether that feeling of certainty has been right all the time in the past, it's not even close. And you could say, well, David, but it's all I have to rely on. Well, if it's reliably wrong, even if it's wrong 20% of the time, but you wouldn't even know, because you don't know what it looks like to be happy all the time and to be effective constantly, right? So you don't even, there's not even a way to know how right it is, how often it is right, because how would you test it? But at least we should be trying to figure out, well, is there something more effective than that? That's something that's constantly wrong. And if you want to know what the effect of the amount that people's certainty that they feel is wrong, all the bad in the world comes from that. So think of all the bad, everything ISIS is doing, everything the opposite political party is doing, all the meanness or times that you just feel frustrated, or if people are mean to you, or if people take stuff from you, or any bad stuff, any bad feelings you have or other people have, any bad stuff that happens, all of it. All of it's coming from people feeling certain and yet being wrong. It's all rooted in that. So all the bad comes from this. So we might just want to figure out a way to see or look or think somewhere different that's not going to give us all the problems that exist. All the good that exists, comes from what we have, but then all the bad too. So we want to find a way to have the good, but literally all the bad. If we accept and give value to fabricated certainty, we're accepting all bad. We're tolerating and basically supporting anything that you find horrific. You're still supporting and tolerating it, if fabricated certainty is okay. You see, when it has value, it's like a person who you might know someone like this in your personal life, or even just on a global scale. Someone like Saddam Hussein might be like this, where if you give any credence to what they say, they'll just lie 100 times harder, or be more dramatic, right? You might know someone like that, where they just BS, they just come up with stuff, or they lie to serve themselves or to help others, or salesmen might be like this, right? People assign some value, and I don't mean you should or shouldn't. Anyway, just for this idea. Suppose you assign some truth value to what a salesman said, then all they have to do is be like, if you dumb down, what people normally do is kind of dumb down a sales pitch, right? So, like, in the sense of, well, I'm sure they're hyping it up, but if it's just a quarter of what they say or half of what they say, then I still want it, right? But when we do that, and I'm not talking about what we should do regarding a sales pitch, but I'm illustrating a deeper idea here. The minute we assign some value to what the salesperson is saying, then all they have to do is emphasize or or have four or five times more energy, or exaggerate 4 or 5 times more, and now we're back to where they get what they want anyway. I related the story with I taught like speed reading, right, for about 10 years. And imagine a place where nobody swims because there's, I don't know, they're just swimming isn't on like some island or some place where they don't do swimming. And then you go somewhere and you meet someone who says they've been a swim coach for 10 years, right? Then if you were to give your opinion on whether or not swimming was possible, and if the swim coach said, yeah, normally I could take someone, I show them how to swim, or suppose swimming exists, but everyone's incompetent swimming where you grew up, and then, or you don't know they're incompetent, you just know how fast they swim across a swimming pool for some reason. But then you run into a swim coach who teaches people to swim fast, and they say, yeah, normally I could take someone who kind of isn't very trained at swimming, and I can get them swimming about 4 times faster. And it would obviously be a little bit ridiculous to just think that your opinion about swimming would be equal to the swim coach who'd been doing it for 10 years and just experienced it, right? But that's how it would be with speed reading, is I've been doing it for 10 years. I had people doing it, right? Constantly, right? And I myself learned it from scratch and learned to read about 4 times faster. But what I would, but this started to show me something about the process that people would think, the deep process, is people would often, they'd ask me what I did, I would tell them. And I wouldn't be trying to sell them speed reading or anything, but they just ask me what I did, so I tell them, which always causes a problem for me because what I do is constantly not believable, right? Like with OMG. People ask me what I do, I can't say what I do because it's not supposed to exist, right? It's not supposed to be possible in a few months to be able to make, like, 5 figures and start making 5 figures a month. If that was possible, then it makes a mockery out of pretty much everyone else's career and certainly educational systems. But same thing with speed reading, is people give their opinion about it based on nothing, right? Like, people have no experience with it, and they would feel the certainty that they would feel about their opinion, they would feel like it had approximately equal weight, maybe half the weight, maybe more, a little bit more weight, but it would be relatively similar in weight to my opinion or knowledge, whatever, about speed reading. And I don't mean that I would argue with people or get any kind of, it's not that it offended me, I just found it rather shocking because it goes to process, right? Like it says something, like I'm somewhere between very skilled and particularly savantish at logical progressions. So what it meant to me that people would equate their opinion about speed reading with my own, the ripple effects for that were pretty profound for me, right? Because it would just mean that like how little it takes for someone to give credence to nothing, right? Again, it's a trivial thing in and of itself, but when it goes to process, it's not trivial. And when it applies to, like, politics, which is about when we're violent, right? Politics is about when we're violent to other people, which literally means it's important. Like, if someone's willing to be violent, if someone says, oh, there should be a law about this, and then they say, oh, I don't want to talk about politics. Well, if someone says there should be a law about something, it means I condone and support massive violence in this situation, which necessarily means it's important. Or else they're saying that being massively violent to another person is in and of itself not important, which is psychotic, right? If I were to beat someone to a bloody pulp and then say, oh, that didn't matter, that's unimportant, I just felt like it, then that would be evidence that I was a psychopath, right? So the minute someone says, I believe in the law, or this should be a law, or whatever, then that's obviously important to them. It's important enough to basically beat someone to a bloody pulp, right? Or put them in jail, shoot them if they try to escape, make their children parentless, right? It's no joke for a 4-year-old child to have their parents taken away from them and stuck in a concrete cell, right? But politics is about that, right? But then people feel certainty. I was saying that with speed learning, it's trivial. But then the same thing when it comes to, say, politics, or when people are violent towards each other, right? Is in our world there's a tremendous amount of, like, implicit violence in our world, like everything to do with healthcare, right? Has to do with government, including licensing of doctors, licensing of medical schools, and so on and so forth. That's implicit violence. That's the willingness to be massively violent towards people for healing others, practicing healthcare, and so forth. So about these very important things where people are willing to be extremely violent towards doctors who aren't licensed, right, which has a massive ripple effect in our society, right? It artificially keeps the number of doctors and healers down to a tiny proportion, right? The drugs that are available, the various cures and medical machinery, etc. Teaching others. We live in a place where it's incredibly scarce to get healthcare, right? Including research and everything, because violence, the implicit threat of violence, right? People would be extremely violent, badly hurt anyone that was trying to do that, right? Because they weren't licensed. They would, and I consider putting someone in jail as being horrifically violent, right? And again, that can mean a 4-year-old has no parents, right? You take the parent and put it in jail. I know what it would do to my 4-year-old if I was put in jail. It would be just a massive thing in his life. It's not a trivial thing. So people feel certainty about that sort of thing. Like, oh yeah, medical licenses, that's nice, right? And that just iterates and repeats itself. As I said, when you're going to get clients, when you're thinking, when people do business, it's so easy, relatively speaking, everything in life is so easy. Dating is so easy when fabricated certainty isn't assigned value. Because then you just go in and you're trying to understand. You're not trying to get validated. You're not trying to make the sale, so to speak. You're just trying to understand. It's so easy to sell when you're trying to understand, right? When you're trying to understand how to get to the best result, then it's simple. But it's so hard, it's so impossible to get to the best result when feeling validated and approved has all this value. When you assign value to the fact that you think you already want to date a person or even sleep with them. Before it makes sense. And some might say, well, when do you feel certain? I'm not talking about when you feel certain. I'm talking about assigning a value to a feeling of certainty. There's a very big difference. Let me explain where our feeling of knowledge, or how our feeling of knowledge, where it comes from, what's going on with it. This will be a great angle to further see things. All right. Your mind gives you feelings see, you get feelings of certainty so consistently that you don't even recognize them. And I don't mean this critically. I just stating what's real. And I know this for myself, right? So I'm not on any kind of pedestal here. But when you look and you see your computer, then you feel a feeling of certainty that you're seeing your computer. That you're looking at an object, your computer, and you're seeing it as it is. That's a feeling of certainty. It's so pervasive that it's just nonstop. When I would tell someone that I taught speed reading, they wouldn't even recognize what they themselves were doing. They wouldn't put it in their own head. They wouldn't say something to me like, okay, well, I have no knowledge, no experience, no basis for knowing much about whether someone can read 4 times faster with the right training or right understanding of reading. And I'm equating the sum total of how much I've worked on that. That's about equal in value, David, to your 10 years, right? So I would say, basically, you've done nothing. You know nothing. You've done nothing because I'm equating it with you. They don't think that way, right? Their mind just gives them a sense of certainty, and it just feels like the most normal thing in the world, just to kind of give their their opinion on it. Like it feels so solid. It feels so real. All right, let me get my train of thought back here. So fabricated certainty. We got a little train got off the track for a second here. We can go here to the Facebook group for a second. Where are we? Oh, that's this. I was talking about where this comes from and why this is important. See, when there's something going on that you want to get rid of or adjust, whatever, with your mind, and I can credit Tony Robbins for saying this a long time ago, you want to find what the good is in it. What is it that your mind is trying to get out of it, and where is it coming from, so you can get the good. You can't often just get rid of something. Like if someone says, "Oh, I don't care what other people think." Well, you can't just stop caring what other people think, because there's an important aspect of that you need. You need to figure out what it is that's helpful about that, get that, and then dissect it out from what isn't helpful. Yeah, I know. I get that question about. It was so long ago and involved a handheld device that was about the shape of a Walkman. I don't know these days. I haven't looked online about how to do it. Basically, it would pace you when you were reading and help you to automatically increase the pace, and your eyes would automatically learn to see about 3 words at a time, and it would actually be easier to put the stuff together in your head. That's my and a couple other things as well. But of course, that's a tangent for the moment. All right. So I was talking about where this is coming from, and feeling and knowing how do they interact, but also why your mind is fabricating certainty, and it's not malfunctioning. Let me first give you an illustration about a car. So with a car, in a sense, we could say it wants to go in exactly the direction it's already heading, right? That's inertia, right? You steer the car. When you steer a car, it might a little bit, the inertia will kind of keep it going in the direction and kind of fight against you steering it a little bit, but the power steering tends to compensate for that. So in practice, it doesn't really fight against you, and psychologically, it doesn't fight against you. If a car had a direct feed, and it could give you a feeling of like wrongness when you tried to steer it, then you'll get a better sense of what it means, what your mind is doing to you, that you want to stop giving any value. This illustration might actually be particularly helpful. All right. So again, first we imagine a car the way it is right now. So you're driving a car. A car always wants to go in the direction it's currently headed, right? That's just physics, inertia. Then you steer it, and of course that changes the direction. Inertia might a little bit fight against you. The power steering mostly compensates for that. And so mostly, if you want to steer a car, it's not really generally a problem, unless you're going too fast, or around a corner or something. But let's ignore the whatever amount the inertia, the physics fights you. Generally speaking, you want to steer your car, you steer it, and there's no pushback, right? You steer it. If we anthropomorphize a car, if we make it feel like, imagine it being a human, then we might incorrectly think that it wants to go in the direction it's currently going. And if we could feel its feelings as our own, then whenever you went to steer it, you would have a feeling of fighting you, or wrongness, or internal conflict. Or you might feel no conflict, you might just not want to steer it, because if you fully felt how it would feel if it was anthropomorphized as a person, then you would feel what? Like going straight in the direction that you're already going. And it might not even occur to you to steer. And that starts to give us more insight on what our brain is doing with us. Your brain, in a manner of speaking, wants to go in the direction it's already going. It at least wants to achieve the goals and keep the certainty it already has. And if you know my local peak illustration, it's not just that your mind is seeking certainty by fabricating it, in the wrong way by fabricating it, but once you achieve certainty, then it wants to protect that certainty. And this explains a massive amount of human behavior. When someone's certain, their fabricated certainty, real understanding doesn't have to be protected. It's not fragile. It's anti-fragile. Real understanding gets strengthened by questions, right? Fabricated certainty, questions feel like an attack, or supposed failure, or expectation failure. You expect something to happen. You expect someone to say yes. You expect a certain result, and it doesn't happen, and that feels unpleasant, or it feels threatening. Then you must have fabricated certainty regarding that thing. So a failure, which is failure and expectation, failure are basically synonyms, right? The way the mind works is or part of how it works is it creates a set of expectations about the world for the next moment, or for that it's always expecting a certain result. And if it's in a learning mode, then it's okay with not getting the result. Like sometimes you get in a particular mode where it's okay. You do something, you think you might get one result, but if it's another, you're all right. There's other times when you really want one result and you really don't want to find out that there's a failure, right? That didn't happen. But whenever that happens, where failure feels scary, or the thought of it feels scary, or expectation failure, not having your expectations met feels painful or scary, or you hope for a particular result, in a way where there's any bad attached to not hitting it, that means there's fabricated certainty that isn't valueless, that has value in your mind, and whatever that value is that's where the feeling of bad is coming from, because it has to be protected. If something's valueless, it doesn't have to be protected. But you have a tremendous amount of pain, relatively speaking, to what you could have without this. You have a lot of pain and inefficiency related to needing to protect fabricated certainty, again, and you would only need to protect it because you're assigning it's just being assigned value by default. The way to get it to be assigned with no value is the same way you achieve anything, which is you just seek to understand this idea, and as your understanding grows, it'll reach a point. As your understanding grows, that's value will diminish, because fabricated certainty is inherently valueless. The real actual value of it is zero. If someone's dating, if you're dating, the value of okay, and this is why I needed to explain something further here. In a circular fashion, it seems to have value. So there's something beneficial about it, and we need to find that. And then, or there's something beneficial related to it. Or there's a frame that makes it seem beneficial, and we need to break that frame. One way or the other, we need to figure out where the supposed benefit is coming from, isolate that in some way, or break the frame that's causing it to appear when it's not really there. If there's any real value, we want to isolate it and keep it. If there's something that's making it look valuable when it's not, then we want to get rid of that. And then we're going to be in good shape, right? But when you have fabricated certainty, then you need to pour all these resources into protecting it, including, as we well know, people don't like to get outside of their comfort zone. Well, the whole concept of not wanting to get outside of your comfort zone is purely with this concept of fabricated certainty. There's no such thing as a comfort zone in an unhelpful way. There could be things you know how to do and don't know how to do, right? And I'm not gonna, like, if I don't know how to build a deck, or I don't know how to skydive, I'm not gonna. Sorry, I'm getting a little tied up in a few different thoughts here. What was I saying? Saying fabricated certainty needs to become valueless. If there's any value, if there's not value, I was saying that what was I explaining that you don't want to depend. Shoot, sorry, a little bit lost my train of thought there. What was my? I can at least I'll get back to the car illustration, and then we'll go from there. So again, we can see with the car where if we were jacked into the car and we felt the car's feelings, which it doesn't have, right? But if we had feelings that it would feel, if it could feel it, whatever, then it would, and if it gave us a sense of wrongness for steering, then that would screw us up, because now whenever we went to steer, we would have pushback that was false. Now let's relate that to a way to, I've talked about bottlenecks early on, and I want to wrap around to that. In order to get to success, then we're breaking the bottlenecks on the way to it. In order to do that, there's some sort of way that we need to, like another dimension or another angle. And I have an illustration for you, which is if you have just a two-dimensional, if there was just a circle here, I could even draw it. See if this is the right thing. All right, circle there, simple. Okay, if you have that and then you have a two-dimensional person, all right, and it's a two-dimensional space, and they're in the middle of this circle, then they can't escape it, right? The circle is like a full obstacle in the dimensions that they're in, the two dimensions. If they could use a third dimension, they could just hop right over, right? So, but you need that extra dimension in order to escape it. So in order to escape or break through obstacles, you're generally looking at an angle, a different angle by which to do it. Your mind is going to do one thing, and it's going to, the default process of your mind is going to predictably get stuck, and it has to do with this fabricated certainty. It's going to fabricate certainty, and it's going to get stuck on protecting that certainty, just like people get stuck in a particular political view, or people get stuck in like an expert. There's a zillion examples of this, but people get stuck in like an expert mindset, where once they declare themselves an expert, then they're scared. They don't want to be curious anymore because it might threaten their certainty that they already know everything, right? Or just a person, people that are kind of know-it-alls, right? They're the ones that are often hardest to talk to or get through to, right? It's like some people are like talking to a wall, right? And they're stuck, right? You can't get through to them. So our mind has a default processing that involves fabricating certainty and sticking with it. We need another dimension to get out of it, and that's going to be our key to success. And that dimension is going to involve conscious interaction, right? And that's another angle on the fundamental question of success, is how do I interact consciously with my non-conscious mind, right? A long time ago, 15 or 20 years ago, I realized that our mind itself wasn't conscious and that we were, and so there's two different things going on. And the one angle on the fundamental question has to do with how do we interact with our mind, how do I use the fact that we're conscious as that extra dimension, that extra angle or lever or steering wheel. How do we consciously interact with our mind, which is a mechanism, and in doing so steer it in the way that's going to maximize things, maximize what we want, maximize goodness, right? The consciousness has to be related to our angle on things. It has to be our way out of this two-dimensional trap, like this guy who's trapped in two dimensions. That third dimension is it's kind of obvious. I don't have much more to say about it at the moment, but it has to involve something that we're going to do consciously. I'll try to bring things to a little bit of a close for this webinar. Not like instantly, but just a little bit. Start to tie things together is another way to put it. Let's kind of a little bit kind of tie things together from scratch here. So we want goodness, at least for ourselves. Then once we think about that a little bit further logically, then we're going to want goodness for other people. All right. The only reason that might not be the case would be if the amount of goodness in total was static. There's only a certain amount to go wrong. That would be horrific. And then we would maybe want to hog as much of it for ourselves, and to have goodness for ourselves necessarily means less for other people and vice versa. When it comes to money and stuff and even goodness, a number of people have that deep in their psyche. They feel certainty about it without realizing it. It's invisible to them because it colors everything that they think of. And then basically they become Democrats, or much more pervasive. Plenty of Republicans feel that way too, unfortunately. But the bottom line is, if people feel like money is static, then they feel like, well, if one person has money, then it must mean another person has less, and then property rights go out the window. Then having property and having the right to it no longer makes any sense. Instead, it becomes about the equitable distribution of a static amount of goodness. If we understand that that's not the case, then we want goodness for ourselves and goodness for others, and to maximize it, ever increasing goodness, get rid of bad. And that's how the universe, the world, existence really is there's not a static amount of goodness. There's more goodness the more we understand that's correct, the more we understand how to understand, and there's less goodness the more we do the opposite of understanding, which has to do with assigning value to fabricated certainty. So we want goodness. In order to have goodness, good stuff, whatever, then just to be simplistic, then we want to figure out, well, what do we do? Right? There's all kinds of different ways to look at this. What do we do? What do we want to shoot for? And then how do we go achieving that? Again, I'm kind of summarizing, tying things together, and kind of seeing if we can get kind of one straight train of thought. But this isn't something, the first time I run through this, it would be too brief to do it this way. But it's good to do now. A little bit of an overview. So to do that, we want to figure out what the bottlenecks are and break them. What people do is they assume away epistemology. They assume away the idea that they don't know how to know what's true. It's pervasively invisible. It's everywhere, so it's invisible. Someone's fundamental method for deciding what's true is invisible to themselves. But that's the real bottleneck that people have. And you can see that invisibility if you look at various answers to success philosophy or whatever, like secret success and so forth. If you look for this, you'll see it. Otherwise, it's invisible because, as I say, it's pervasive, so it's invisible. It's everywhere, so you don't see it. None of it addresses how to know what's true. It'll assume that. Again, when you say something like focus, or persevere, or I'm not picking on the people saying this. They often have good, helpful things to say, but I'm trying to help you have the right ideas in your head about success. So I'm not really going after gurus. I'm just trying to clarify ideas here. But whatever it might be that they say, look for this. It assumes that if you think about it, you'll figure out what's correct. If someone says, write down what your goals are, and then they say, well, now stop and think about it, and now write down what goals would really be good for you, then that might be a revelation to people, and they might make up better goals if they stop and reflect on their goals. But that advice, that exercise still assumes that once you stop and think about it for yourself, that you'll do that correctly. If someone says you want to have a goal, Rick pointed this out, Rick McAvoy was great in the beginning of Alchemy, and he said, well, David, here's what I've been taught about pursuing success, pursuing goals or achieving goals or success. And he outlined it. It was great. It was a really cool outline of kind of a good kind of archetype or summation or summary of a lot of success philosophy that's out there. And it's not exactly incorrect, but it's incorrect in the sense that it assumes away that we're able to think about things accurately in the first place. But we're not. And that is our obstacle. Well, until and unless we break that obstacle, it doesn't matter to try and achieve success, because you're going to have all these errors, and they're not like little errors. They're massive errors. Like, something's wrong if you just taking America in a vacuum, when you have half the country, we're divided politically so strongly, again, about something that must be important because people back it up with violence, right? I pay $700,000 for last year, or I will be met with massive violence from government thugs, right? I'll be ripped from my family, much as I said, my son won't have a father, and I'll be stuck in a cell if I don't do that. So if people are willing to do that to me, then it must be important to them, right? So they can't say it's unimportant. So about something so important, at least half the country is horribly wrong, right? And willing to back up that wrongness with extreme violence. I consider it extreme to put me in a cell and have my son be parentless, or at least fatherless, right? But my wife and I co-sign we do our taxes together, so we would both go to jail, right, if we didn't do it. So again, if we think about it correctly, it must be important to people, and at least half of them are violently wrong. And really, everyone that believes in taxation or the law is violently, horribly wrong, right? Or they believe in, you know, that should happen to me if I don't pay that much. So my whole point in saying that is that it's not trivial, that we're not just wrong about little things, right? But there's a huge reality. Right? It's not imagined in my head. There will actually be a real $700 or whatever $1,000, roughly speaking, going out. That's a very big, huge reality, right? And that's one of a million bazillion examples of our incorrect thinking is pervasive and affects us massively. So all success philosophy that we normally hear, and I was saying that Rick summed it up in something roughly like, well, I've been shown, like, you want to have a goal like bigger than yourself, like very big, and I might forget some of the details of it, but you want to plan out the steps on the way to the goal and then proceed step by step till you get to your to get to the end, right? But once again, as always, that assumes that when we go to think about stuff, we think accurately. The bottleneck or the obstacle to think, or what makes accurate thinking is actually not very difficult to do. Except it's impossible because it's invisible or fully blocked by fabricated certainty having value. Really figuring out the right philosophy on when to use violence is not that complicated. Like, the idea of people owning property is not a complicated idea. And it's one that in people's normal day-to-day life they grasp just fine. And yet, when it comes to politics, they just lose their mind. And they think that it's perfectly reasonable to use massive violence against people and extort massive sums of money from them, when they would never do it in their day-to-day life, right? So property rights is not complex. It doesn't need some complex scheme, but like how to think accurately is not that hard to do. And I can certainly explain to people how to do it. Even if it was hard, I can explain. But there's a full block that makes it invisible because it competes. See, when I talk about property rights, what people do is they also assign value to their fabricated certainty. What's normal? What's the standard? Well, how are we going to build roads? They'll just come up with random stuff, right? Just spout nonsense, right? If I say rape is bad, then no one's going to say to me, well, how are we going to have roads if we don't have rape, right? What does one have to do with the other? If I say extortion is bad, then what do roads have to do with extortion? Nothing, right? Or forced, sexual slavery, because that could earn money just like extortion, right? All we have to do is, enslave the top 5 or 10% best-looking people. We could do that by a vote, right? I mean, a vote of who's better looking, right? Just who gets the votes, likes, put all their pictures up or whatever, a little video, and enslave them, right? Chain them to beds and charge for sleeping with them, right? Just do that instead of taxing the way we normally do, and that would pay for roads too, right? So, but people come up with this stuff and they assign value to their thoughts, like, oh, but how are we going to pay for roads or schools or some such school? How are we going to pay for that? So because of the value we assign to that feeling of certainty, and then that becomes a substitute for thinking accurately. And when you have the cheap substitute, it robs the value from the real deal. As long as I'm thinking of like an analogy with like sex and marriage, perhaps if it's certainly not the only reason to get married at all or the main value, but if like obviously if the more free sex is outside of marriage, the less value there is in marriage, right? or if we were to whatever. I'm only using that to illustrate. I'm not trying to make a point about marriage or sex whatsoever there. I'm just, there's nothing about that. It's just illustrating what I mean, like that when another thing I'll talk about with the stuff that I talk about, I'll say, like, please don't just start trying to make an analogy or put what I'm saying in a box. Don't say, oh, is that like this course, or is that like what this person says, right? Again, that's an example of people trying to fabricate certainty. There's a lot I need to talk about, which I'll do in a subsequent webinar. I need to delve into the process more of how your mind fabricates certainty. But I have to start somewhere, and I have to do my best I can explain this. It's coalesced for me, this part, fairly recently. Obviously, I have a lot of other knowledge and understanding that I've been talking about for years, but I wanted to get this to you sooner rather than later, and start things going. And the only, once again, the only drawback to me doing a webinar kind of quickly before having it all organized is the fabricated certainty having value. What if I had particularly like an organized presentation? It wouldn't necessarily lead to any more understanding of what people really need, right? But people can feel very satisfied. If I was like, here's what you're supposed to get. If you can answer these 3 questions at the end of this webinar, then you get an A. Then you've gotten it. And people would like that, especially if I framed it in a way that kind of disguised that particularly well, right? People love that feeling of certainty. It's really what you're going for constantly, is this feeling of certainty about all kinds of stuff, and especially that things will be good, that things will be better, right? But not even that you're already good, that you're already powerful. I've talked about that in the beginning of alchemy, was we want to feel, because of this fundamental feeling of helplessness that our brain concludes, which we're not helpless consciously. Once we have that extra dimension of consciousness, we're fundamentally not helpless. But our brain is not conscious, our mind isn't. So it concludes accurately, if it didn't have us to be conscious with it, that it's helpless. And so it needs to fill that void. It fills it by fabricating certainty, because the fundamental helplessness has to do with knowledge, what's going on. So if I were to structure things and tell people what they were supposed to learn and whether or not to know whether they got what they were supposed to get out of this webinar, then it could lead to that feeling that people think they want, right? Let me give you one last indication here, one last major thing that I harness this for, to all kinds of ways in life, but especially to make money and to have creative breakthroughs, which are really necessary to make money, or they're sure as hell helpful. How necessary they are, I won't assert, but they're helpful as heck. And for me personally, that's how I make my money, is by having a whole bunch of creative breakthroughs constantly, even like what to say in a particular email, right? Our emails are pretty cool, right? The storyline, there's a lot going on with them. Our open rate's very high and consistent. We don't get the attrition that a lot of people with email lists get. So I do this, but you see, people's minds are trying to fabricate this certainty, and this fabricated certainty gives a false sense of closure, which dissipates creative tension. It's another major lesson, and that one's going to be pretty triumphant. You're going to really like that. And so I'm giving an indication of it now. But I get so far, my big secret to breakthroughs is that I keep up the creative tension by not assigning value to fabricated certainty of like, oh, okay, these results are good for this reason, or here's why it's already good enough, or what's normal, what's the standard, let me keep expectations low, and then I try to hit that. And I'm not saying you need to have high expectations either. Get out of that whole freaking game of what's my expectation, what's the standard, what's the norm. You don't need to play this game at all. It's a whole universe, it's a whole world, it's a whole paradigm that's so deep that once it becomes valueless, then it'll be easy to see the way to think accurately. It's just not that hard to think accurately, but it's impossible. Fabricated certainty just is quick. As long as you're looking in one place, you're not going to look for the other way to do it. One more illustration. I was talking to Mike. Just both him and I, we post links a lot, right? And we both sometimes make links that are broken. And as I was explaining this whole concept of fabricated certainty, to illustrate it, again, when I'm illustrating things, I'm not talking about the topic I'm using to illustrate it. I'm talking about this, this idea, I'm just illustrating. So I don't care one way or the other about broken links. But how does it feel if you make an email or you make a web page and has a broken link on it, but you're thinking about, oh, I'm sure, like we think, oh, I'm sure it's right, right? The feeling of like certainty, oh, I don't have to bother checking it. So a page that has a broken link and a page that doesn't feels the same in terms of how certain. But if what I mean is sometimes we'll both feel sure, and whatever. Sometimes we'll feel sure, or even just imagine a fictitious person. You can imagine a fictitious person that feels certain that they don't need to check their link on a web page or an email because I'm sure I did it right? They just feel certain. Then suppose they go and just click on it to check it, which is a pretty much foolproof. If you click on a link and the web page comes up, then it's virtually impossible physically for it not to, it's a pretty foolproof check. Here's what it looks like if you've checked the link. You feel the same certainty. The feeling doesn't increase because it already was full. I'm saying that's how it feels sometimes. Sometimes you feel totally confident and yet you're wrong. So you can imagine feeling totally confident that a link you made worked and there's no reason to check. So you couldn't feel more confident by checking because you already feel totally confident. But if you click on it and check it, then what it looks like is the same feeling of confidence that actually was worthless, plus the memory that you clicked on it, and there's the web page. Now, is that total certainty in the sense that maybe your mind couldn't have been hypnotized or something like that? Well, sure, but you can just stipulate that away, and but what I mean is you can say, well, given that my memory is accurate, given that I actually clicked on the web page, then yeah, it works. My point here, though, is that looking at whether you feel like you need to check the link is totally irrelevant. That should have no value, because the link being broken or the link working feels the same. What you want to do to see whether the link definitely works, to have the correct type of certainty, is to just think about whether you checked it, whether you clicked on it. And so zero value to the feeling of whether or not you should click on it, or whether or not you feel sure that it's right, and you just fully look in a different place. And my other point here is, how complicated is it to click on a link and check and see if it works? That's not hard or complicated. You just do it or you don't. What makes it not happen is if you check that place where you feel certain and it tells you, oh, don't bother checking, and you don't check it. But you don't need a seminar on how to get proper, correct certainty about a link to get it right. You just need to have the fabricated certainty be valueless, and then it's dead obvious what you do. You click on the freaking link and you see if the right web page comes up. So thinking accurately, even though I'm perfectly willing to explain to you how to do it, but it's really not hard. But it's impossible, again, as long as it's in the same currency. The value it's competing with fabricated certainty, because it's constantly easier to fabricate the certainty. Like if you were to think about, how do I actually become more attractive, or how do I actually become smarter, or how do I actually become more of a good person? The answer is not that hard to answer. But generally, people don't really ask that question because they're so busy doing things to fabricate certainty, to prove to themselves that they're already good, already smart, and to protect it, right? Hang out with people that validate that. Don't hang out with people that don't. People don't even realize they do it, right? Their lives revolve often around protecting their certainty. Hang out with people that agree with you. And am I saying hang out with people that don't? I'm not commenting on that. I'm just illustrating this point. But certainly, if people feel perturbed by somebody who's criticizing their core ideas, right, or their politics, or their religion, or whatever the heck, their ability to make money, prospects for OMG, for our coaching program, whether or not you should buy our program, I mean, if people weren't blocked, it's dead obvious, right? Like, if you actually compare our program with a clear head and take a look at what it is, I'm preaching to the choir on purpose here, but if you take a look at our program and our earnings reports and so forth, it's just obvious that, but people have all kinds of certainty about what's possible, and they're like, oh, other people have earnings reports too, right? People have like 3 or 4, right? We have like 1,000 or more, right? And they're detailed and they're high numbers and that are from scratch, not just gurus, other gurus saying, oh yeah, I did it, his program and it worked. But people just don't. Of course, plenty of people do. We make plenty of sales. We're a very successful business, but it's sad all the people that could benefit that don't. And it's not complicated. They don't need a lesson in how to analyze buying decisions. What they need is to clear out their certainty that is BS, like oh, it's too good to be true, oh, it's a scam, all this, and just look at it. What the heck does a scam even mean? What's a scam? Right, a scam would be like, invest money with me, and I'll put it in stocks and get a return and send it to you, and then I just pocket the money, right? That kind of thing's a scam, right? I guess it could be a scam if we were to say I'll show you how to rank on Google, but then we don't, right? But but to ask whether it is, and I don't even know, maybe hardly anyone looks at our thing and thinks that maybe it is, but they find some way to rationalize not getting in. But the number of people that should buy versus that do, right, is probably a pretty big discrepancy. And again, they don't need lessons. I'm illustrating that the block isn't so much that you need more information on how to think clearly. There's some stuff that's helpful to know, and I can tell it to you. But like the law of non-contradiction and understanding words and so forth. But by far the huge block is this. Just like understanding what I have to share with people, really, in one sense, there's some complication to it, but it's not nearly as hard as people make it out to be, except for this. Except for people are trying to hit this spot. And let me wrap up here, the spot of this feeling of certainty. Here's how and why. This is going to be pretty helpful. Here's how and why your mind fabricates certainty. And first, let's notice with a car. Is it wrong that a car has forward momentum rather than just staying still? That's not bad. As a matter of fact, it gives you something to harness in order to steer. So your brain has, in a kind of a metaphorically parallel way, it has a forward momentum to it that's right and good, except that if you don't steer it. Except that it makes you feel like you shouldn't steer it consciously. People are constantly concluding that they're already correct, which is the same without even realizing it. Like your mind makes you feel like what it's telling you is correct. So like 100 to 1 or whatever. I'm just pulling that number out of thin air, but just to give a sense of what I mean. 99% of the time that your brain is telling you it's correct, it's not telling you that it's telling you it's correct. It's just telling you something and you take it for granted that it's true and correct. Just like whenever you look around and you think you see things, objects as they are, which is false. I'll get into that in a different webinar, but it'll be fascinating. But it's knowably, pretty obviously false. Of course you don't see things as they are. You don't look at a computer and see it. It's moronic. You don't look at a tree or your lawn, or if I say think of your friend, you don't think of your friend. That's ridiculous. But your brain tells you that nonstop every second. And it's ridiculous. But your brain's constantly telling you. And so it gives you certainty, and it's invisible certainty. All right. If it was the case that we anthropomorphize this car, the car gives you a feeling of wrongness every time you try to steer it, then what would you want to do? Wouldn't you want to stop checking? Or let's say that it didn't give you a feeling. Let's say it broadcast. Let's say it put in visually. It put a word up on the dashboard that said, no, don't turn, every time you went to turn. Should you look at that statement? No. And that illustration contains like the secret to life, in essence. Your brain is always going to tell you that its fabricated certainty has value. So it's like always on. And we're used to like constantly agreeing with it. It constantly doesn't want you to steer. And what steering means, you feel like you're steering, but you're steering within a frame, and you need to steer the frame. Okay, so you think you're interacting with your brain in a way that you're like making decisions and moving your life. You are, but you need to steer frames, not steer within the frame. It doesn't really tell you that you have the option to steer the frame itself. Steering the frame itself has to do with ignoring the feeling of certainty and looking for your brain in essence tells you this frame is the only frame there is and it's right. And it tells you that so powerfully that it doesn't even say that. It makes you feel it so pervasively that you don't even realize to question it. And the magic that I'm doing for you now is I'm doing something to help make it visible for you so you can see it. Okay? So it doesn't even say, here's a frame, it's right, don't question it. It gives you the frame and assumes it and acts upon it, and you don't even see it. But that's what you need to steer, not within the frame. And you're so busy steering within the frame that you think you're doing something. And again, the secret to success is having this other way of steering that's going to get you around every bottleneck and obstacle. And that's what I'm giving you. Okay, so with the car illustration, you ignore this thing because it's not relevant. That it's saying don't steer, don't steer, don't steer. All right, so why does your brain fabricate this certainty? We want to like it. It's not a problem. The problem is assigning it value. Or I could say assigning it the wrong kind of value. If you're playing Monopoly, the board game Monopoly, the Monopoly money has value within the frame of playing Monopoly. And so there is value to fabricated certainty within a certain frame that we'll take a look at. Outside of it, that money is valueless. Monopoly money is totally valueless if you use it to try to purchase stuff in real life, right? Now let's go back to the website illustration, the one that gives the temperature, the weather, and half the time it gives the correct meteorological report, which is mostly right, and half the time it doesn't, but you don't know which is which. You assign that value, that has value within if that's the only thing you can possibly rely on, then rely on. But it shouldn't have any weight whatsoever compared to something that has true input about the weather. If you look outside and walk outside and experience the temperature and see whether it's raining, and you give that a certain amount of currency, like dollars, and you go to that website and you assign it dollars as well, and you try to average out the two, then that's ridiculous. And then on top of it, if it takes effort to go outside and check, but the website is super quick and easy to pull up, then you'll keep pulling up the website only and never go outside and check. And that illustrates what happens, practically speaking, in life. It's super easy to go and think things through properly, just like it's ultimately easy to go outside, but people never do because it's like hard compared to just checking the website. So you'll check this feeling of certainty, and it's so easy and quick that as long as you're willing to do that, you don't do what it really takes to think clearly. As soon as you're not willing to do it, as soon as you're not going to check that website, you just go outside and check the weather, then you just do that. And then it's easy. And that's how easy it is to get things right, weirdly enough. All right. Your feeling of what's correct, including it gives you urges, this feeling of what you want to do. And so at first it's going to fight against you in a sense if you're trying to steer it. It just comes, it's like a democracy, it's like a bunch of votes from like past experiences and just all the ways that your mind fabricates certainty. Basically your mind comes up with a little bit ironically like the scientific method. It'll, but with bias. The scientific method is trying to get the bias out of it. And with the scientific method plus confirmation bias is basically how your mind operates. Is it kind of forms a theory about stuff, and then an expectation about what's going to happen next based on how things seem to be headed. So if you see a car driving down the road, you expect it to keep going in that, down the road, right? You don't even think about it, but your mind just extrapolates. If someone's nice to you a few times, you expect them to be nice the next time. And then what'll happen is it'll form a theory based on a trend quite quickly, and then it'll form an expectation. And which is also similar to a standard or a norm. It's going to get a sense of what's normal, what the standard is, and then it's going to try to hit it and see if the world hits it or have you try to hit it. And that's how your mind gains certainty. If your mind forms an expectation or a sense of a standard or norm, or it looks around at your peer group, looks around at how much money people are making around you, and it says, all right, well, this is what you should make. And then you go ahead and you try to hit that. And if you hit it, then you feel more certain about how cool you are and how competent you are and how smart you are and how good you are and all that. Same thing with going out and trying to get a client or dating or everything in your life. Your mind is having a sense of what the norm, the standard, the expectation is, and it tries to hit it. If it hits it, it gains confidence. In other words, it fabricates more certainty, and then it keeps going in that direction. That algorithm that I just explained to you, if there's no consciousness attached to it, that's the best you can do. And even if there is consciousness attached to it, it's the right thing to attach to a conscious person. But what you want to do consciously, you have a certain amount of conscious attention. And the secret to success is that wherever you direct your attention to ignoring the fabricated certainty and seeking understanding of what's actually true, good, and correct, and so forth, then you'll break through, you'll break out, you'll find something better. I'm going to need to illustrate this in a number of ways for you to see it better and better, but which I'll do in the future. But that's fundamentally what's going on. Is in order for you to survive, this whole world, our species, and you in particular as an individual, your person, your human body. Excuse me. It's all made to, by default, have a pretty good chance of keeping you alive long enough to get involved with the process and get things right. However, there's a way in which we feel that in one sense, but our mind tells us something different, because our mind thinks it's itself, which is not conscious, and it kind of pulls us in to just like, again, steering within the frame. We feel like we're consciously interacting with our mind. We feel like we're doing something and thinking, but we're just doing it within, like, we're only, call it making changes in the margins, or again, like within the frame. You can't get perseverance, and motivation isn't going to get you to, it's going to get you to stuff that's within the frame that your mind already has you in right now. And you're going to hear other people tell you, all you need to do is focus and persevere, and you're going to be successful. And that will be correct whenever you're already in the right frame. You're already in the right mountain peak that you're trying to climb. However, in order to reliably achieve success in anything in life, constantly in life, pervasively, and I think within reason I demonstrate this in my own life. I've given a laundry list in the past. I won't do it again. But I at least conform to someone who might be doing this pretty well. The results in my life. A lot of your success, potential success in life, is going to be outside the frame, outside your fabricated certainty, and the only way to get there is to see past something that feels like it's the only possible right thing. Like this, again, like I talk about the frame. Your mind sets a frame, and it doesn't even tell you that you're certain about it. But you'll get indications whenever I tell you you don't need to struggle in life. Life is easy. by refusing to struggle, by refusing to attack, then try to win, like people normally do, by persevering and being determined and fighting smart and so forth, by generally refusing to struggle, I instead seek to win before I attack. I do that by seeking understanding. I don't see, the opposite of winning first and then attacking is fabricating certainty and then trying to prove that you're already right, but you don't know whether you can achieve the goal for sure because you don't have this great understanding. You haven't set yourself up to win for sure yet ahead of time, which I like to do. So whenever success is outside the frame that feels that you're stuck on, where you'd have to break through fabricated certainty, and your mind doesn't like doing that, it's going to fight you, then success is going to be beyond your reach until and unless you understand what I'm telling you. It's the only way to get to it. That's why I say this is the key to success. If success is within the frame that you're in, within the paradigm that you're in, or whatever, then the key to success is just keep persevering, be more motivated, and try harder and so forth. Focus more. Does that make sense? And all the interviews and all the reports for people who were successful, it was because they already had the overall frame, and they just had to focus and try harder within it. And again, that works as long as your frame is right. What I'm here for is to help you achieve success regardless of your current frame, regardless of your current certainty or current political beliefs and so forth. Everyone can get to the correct political beliefs, which basically has to do with property rights, that I've said before, period. Like there's one right answer. There's not multiple right answers. Right? There's one right answer to religion. There's not multiple answers. Other people can't get there by just persevering, right? People with the wrong political beliefs aren't going to get to the right ones by just watching more of whatever TV shows they watch and cable news channels they watch or whatever, right? Reading the same newspapers, hanging out with the same people. Neither will they do it by just hopping randomly to someone else's frame, right? You need a way to examine the frame itself and steer to the one that's going to be correct. But again, it's not hard to do. You might say, well, how do I do that? And I'll get to that in the future more, and I've already explained it a lot. But it's just like just keep the illustration in mind of going out and checking the weather. You might not do it if you live in a kind of a big tall building and you live like in the top floor, up a bit, and you don't feel like taking the elevator down and going outside, right? I realize there's a window, but maybe find a way for that not to really tell you the answer, or maybe there's whatever. But you're not going to do it if you can just check a website if you think that that's sufficient, right? It's not that hard to think clearly and accurately and come to and break your frame and so forth, but it's impossible until and unless you again assign. It's like monopoly money. Fabricated certainty. Oh, and I was trying to tell you why your mind does it. It's your mind is set to keep you alive. You need to feel certain in order to take any kind of action. And you might say, well, David, then what do I do? Again, if you look, when you're an infant, this is kind of hard, right? But you're old enough now that if you look for real, correct things for footholds, you'll find them. And I've given you a million of them. You can go back through alchemy and go back through anything I talk about, but you'll see what I mean by just looking and finding them. And I gave you one with politics, property rights, right? It's not hard, and it's out there, right? If you look for it, then that's that. I've explained how to know whether God exists, and that's not so much about religion, by the way. You know why it's necessary to know why God exists? Because of this idea of scarcity, and scarcity has an effect on your entire financial life. Like scarcity affects your happiness, your financial life, your relationships, your entire ability to love and trade with other people is totally dictated by whether or not you believe in scarcity or abundance. And abundance doesn't mean plenty. Abundance means more is more or less is less. Potential abundance. But your life it's so massive to your ability to make money and your ability to be happy in relationships. And so obviously fundamentally your success and happiness are massively related to your mind's frame about scarcity or abundance. Massively, just beyond belief important. And again, it dictates someone's political views. Not exactly their party, but even like as I said, like people within both parties will have some ideas of scarcity, and it'll lead to stuff that they terrible like again. The reason why people violate property rights has to do with a belief in scarcity. And once you're violating property rights and you believe in that, then it's much more confusing with making money. People manage to do it, but again, it's a much more difficult frame even if people manage to do it. And you'll sabotage yourself right and left. Even after people make the money, then they'll often just waste it and treat it like worthless. And it's very hard. You can't really being happy when you have a fundamental frame of scarcity. It's terrible. That's why understanding about God matters. Has to do with that. It's the logical step from that. And this is when you learn to think in terms of footholds, and you only need one thread to climb out. See, when fabricated certainty takes evidence, it needs expectation, then you see what happens, and then you get more evidence. Or if you're trying to believe that you're attracted in someone who's dating, and they're trying to get dating, they're dating, or even they're hanging out with people in order to get affirmed that they're a good person and a smart person and an attractive person, you need more and more and more, right? And it just keeps going, and also it gets swamped so that you get all this feedback, and so any one little piece of information has very little power in this fabricated certainty world, right? What one person says or does, right, good or bad, doesn't have that much power. So one little piece of information, it gets swamped out, and that's what happens all the time with people. When you think outside of fabricated certainty, and you can see this illustrated in like Hercule Poirot or Sherlock Holmes or certain mystery heroes, mystery novel, like kind of detective heroes, they do this right. So Sherlock Holmes or Hercule Poirot by Agatha Christie, they're some of the best success-related illustrations around, better than generally success books. They illustrate the success process in a certain way, because when you only need the smallest of anomalies or the smallest of threads, the smallest of seeds, as somebody said, right? And you can grow from there or pull from there until you unravel the whole sweater. Then you just need the smallest foothold in order to achieve massive things. And that's reality for you. You just need the tiniest foothold. And this relates to what I've talked about in the past about semi-soft locks. But you need this in order to really benefit from what I talked about semi-soft locks. You just need the smallest foothold if you're confident from there. If you only need a little thing, if you only need another little thing, another little thing. If everything's swamped all the time, then you need massive amounts to overcome whatever attitude you have or a frame. People can't break a frame. They can only try to swamp it massively with something else. If someone has low self-esteem, they need massive experiences or a massive amount of affirmation, right, in order to fill the black hole of low self-esteem. But if you can get outside of the whole fabricated certainty game, then you only need the tiniest of understandings, the tiniest starting point. Understanding God exists, scarcity, what the purpose of life is, to have goodness in your experience for other people, and that it's not about liking yourself and so on and so forth. But you just need one building block to lead to the next. Again, very little, and you could do so much with so little when you're outside of this fabricated certainty frame. But we're so surrounded with it; it's so normalized that but you can get out of it circularly. It protects itself, but once you start to unravel it, the protection unravels, so it becomes easier to unravel, and it's a positive spiral, right? You start to break it, it has less power as there's less resistance, and then it's easier to break, and then there's even less resistance, and so forth. So your feelings of certainty come from this accumulation of like evidence and this expectation, and then the world meets your expectations. You do something competently, so you feel competent or smart, and then you feel more certainty that you're competent or smart. Then the more certain you feel, also the more scared people often feel, because now they have more to protect. The more certain people think that they want certainty, but it puts them on a treadmill. This happens, you can see this on a small scale with money. People want money, they get it, and then they feel scared of not having a lot of it. Now they're on a treadmill, or they need to grow, or they need to make as much as the year before, because now that's their new identity. And oh my gosh, what did we make last month? What did I make last year? I have to make more. I have to make more. So The fabricated certainty game keeps you on a treadmill running faster and faster, and it's harder and harder. And that's why people say money doesn't buy happiness. I'll tell you this. Money absolutely can buy you the good stuff. It's wonderful within a good frame, but you don't need an infinite amount of it. But a certain amount is totally helpful, and you could totally use to have more good for yourself and others, right? But not if you're in the fabricated certainty frame, because the more you have, the more scared you are to protect it. Same thing with your feeling of being attractive, or like people that are attractive, isn't it? Don't a lot of people, we know this, right? Like people that often have terrible self-esteem issues. First of all, being attractive, like physically attractive, feels very important to them because it's their way of feeling superior or at least good enough, right? Whatever they're trying to get to. And then the more certainty they have about it, the more it needs to be protected because it's more value, right? Like this certainty, fabricated certainty doesn't look like fabricated certainty. It looks like certainty. And certainty looks like you constantly feel about things all the time. It doesn't look like anything. It's invisible because you feel it all the time with all the time. But by looking for it and by me talking about it, we're starting to tease it apart so you can start to see it. And at first it'll just be the small crack. You'll see it a little bit, and then, as I said, it'll grow. But if you're looking for it to all slam you at once, it's not like that because necessarily, or at least feeling it pervasively, because feeling comes from an accumulation like a habit, right? You do something for 30 days, it's repetition or repeating experiences or repeated confirmations of things. That's where the feeling of certainty comes from. So you can go in either order. You can give precedence to the feeling of certainty and then protect it and then never get to correct thinking or so forth, or you can do something that feels wrong or weird at first, go for correct certainty, go for true understanding, and then the feeling will catch up, right? Because just like changing any habit, if you, like at first you get resistance from the habit, from the previous habit, but then later the doing it right becomes a habit and it feels normal. And then it gets on your side. But what you never want to do, so what's going to feel normal, and this mainly feels this way for me, which is my kind of secret at this point, and why like things are particularly easy for me, is fabricated certainty. My mind telling me to feel certain about things basically feels like monopoly money. It has worth within one particular frame where it has worth, and that's it. But I don't. That's not where I check to see whether I know something properly or not. But it's not that it's not about feeling certain of all the correct ideas. That comes as well, right? The more you discover about what's correct, the more you'll feel about what's right. But the main thing is you just want that feeling of certainty to feel valueless. Again, to put the most simple illustration, if you want your links in your emails or your web pages to work, then you want to totally ignore, after you you type it, you want to totally ignore whether you feel like you should check and just check and click on the link. And then basically in life, you when I say ignore, at least assign zero value to it, even if you feel like it has value. Okay. Remember, the feeling just comes from repetition, so don't worry about the feeling. You're going to misinterpret. For a while, you're going to perhaps constantly misinterpret everything as you're supposed to feel a certain way. No, the way you feel certain. It will feel like it has value. I'm not telling you to feel certain that fabricated certainty doesn't have value. You will feel like it does have value. And then after you feel that, then still look somewhere else to understand what's really right. So whatever your political beliefs are, that'll feel like that has value. You don't need to feel like that doesn't have value. You need to, despite the value that you feel from it, look to think clearly anyway. And what does that look like? It looks like finding a foothold. And the foothold doesn't get swamped out by because it's a different currency. A foothold gets swamped out. You fall right off the foothold if if you if all the fabricated certainty has to compete with it. It's why I tell people I can't help you strategically unless you totally trust me, and then generally that's impossible for people, and I understand why it would be. It's hard for me to trust me sometimes. But I look wrong all the time because people go, all right, David, then they just expect me to do stuff that leads to results right away. They expect me to chase after fabricated certainty like everyone else does, and I don't. And so I look wrong, and then people panic, and then it's confusing for them. That's why it was a miracle that to make OMG is Mike and Greg, to an incredibly high degree, let me do things like I wanted to do them, which involve not pursuing fabricated certainty, which looks so wrong, generally speaking. And it became harder, you add more people. It looks so wrong and I couldn't explain it. And that's why I just had to tell Greg and Mike to trust me. By the time they trusted me, OMG got so successful that it was easier for people to at least, trust me a little bit. But the amount of trust is basically virtually impossible. But now that I can explain this, it'll help everyone. And it's why I tell you in orientation videos, if you remember, stop with the trying to track results to become successful. That's just as fabricated certainty treadmill. Instead, just gain understanding. I've explained how to do that plenty of times, but I'll go through it again in light of this for sure. Right? But it's all going to be easy if you assign monopoly money value to the fabricated certainty and just start looking to understand this better. Remember, that doesn't mean that you feel no value. You will feel value to fabricated certainty for a while, and maybe forever, whatever. But then you still seek to understand in some real way anyway. If you're trying to solve a murder mystery, then you might feel like a certain person had to do it, but then you can feel that and you still feel it. You don't try to make the feeling go away. You just act despite the feeling, and you go and look for clues. And if there's one anomaly, right? This is illustrated many, many times in detective books. Is there'll be one little anomaly, and the stupid person, right? There's always like kind of a straight man, right? The police guy to Sherlock Holmes or whoever it might be, right? Is saying, oh, just ignore it. Oh, come on, what are you making a big deal out of that little stain by the window over there? That was probably from before, or whatever. Right? You see, because it gets swamped out by their theory. They assign it all the same currency, and in light of all the evidence for their pet theory, then they just ignore our mind is built to preserve certainty by marginalizing, deleting, right? Seeking feedback that's going to tell us that what we already want to know, right? You get confirmation bias. So again, our mind by default pursues certainty. You can harness this by reframing certainty into true understanding, by seeking about that first. And don't be in a rush. This is also why when you start to use this, you start to look at this in light of everything else I said, so many other things might start to make sense. That's why I say don't be in a rush, right? When you're in a rush and you assign value to fabricated certainty, and normally a rush comes from assigning value. You're not going to be in a rush if you don't assign value to fabricated certainty. Right? People make deadlines just to feel certain about something, to create an expectation so they can meet it. Right? People set themselves up to go get more certainty. They create conditions. Right? That's why people look for what's normal. Well, what should I expect? Every time you ask that, you have to look and say, am I doing that just to set myself up so then I can have a chance to get what I expect and then feel more fabricated certainty? Right? You don't have real knowledge from having the world meet your expectations. If you try something and succeed, you don't have more knowledge that you're better, right? Or that you're better at what you're doing necessarily. You do have a certain type of new knowledge, but it's the knowledge of looking at something from another angle and gaining the knowledge that you could get from a new experience, even a success or a failure. You won't get the knowledge you could get if you're busy using the knowledge to prove yourself right. If you're busy using the experience or the feedback to prove yourself right. Once again, feedback is potentially helpful in life, having experiences, having successes or failures. But you lose the value, the potential value in experiences, feedback, failures, and successes if you're busy using it to fabricate certainty, using it to prove that you're right, or finding a way to marginalize a failure, right, and explain it away and so forth. Or if it panics you, or if you're just afraid of it and then you don't try at all. all feedback can help you if you're seeking understanding from it, which you can only do once you first get rid of the value of fabricated certainty. Not the feeling of fabricated certainty, but the value of it. It shouldn't affect your seeking, affect what you're doing, or your processing, your thinking. There's the feeling, but it shouldn't have an ability to do something that affects your thinking, your conclusions, what you think about, what you focus on, where you assign your resources, what you do. Right? That's what I mean by it shouldn't have value. It shouldn't have influence. It'll be there, but it shouldn't have influence. It'll quiet down by just not assigning it value. Then the feeling will dissipate and reverse, just like with any habit. All right, that is good for the talking for now. I have plenty more to say and plenty more to illustrate, but we have to always stop these at some point. But again, the bottom line is that the block to the key is seeking understanding. Your block to doing that is that it gets swamped out by assigning value to fabricated certainty. Fabricated certainty does not seem like fabricated certainty. It seems like normal. Seems like the only thing there is, right? It seems like knowledge. It seems like the only option. In order to look for another option, you need to assign it zero value. You assign it zero value by here's a foothold for assigning it zero value. It's wrong sometimes. All right? Wouldn't it be nice to have a method that isn't wrong sometimes? Say, well, David, but we're not perfect. But how are we going to just come on? If something clearly is suboptimal, shouldn't you look for something optimal? That's not complicated, right? There's your foothold. And furthermore, all the bad, right? Nazis were Nazis because they assigned value to fabricated certainty. Anyone else who assigns value to fabricated certainty, including from authority figures, right? Including that experiment with electrifying, people. When an authority figure told them it was okay, they need to do it. All methods of fabricating certainty, right? A lot of conversion training is helping, is about helping people fabricate certainty about your product, right? That's not wrong or right. Again, you need to harness it with other people because that's the reality, right? Like gravity. But your foothold, right, is that maybe there's a better way, maybe. When something's not totally good, then you either accept it, which means you're accepting all the bad that's there, and you're basically approving of it, or you seek something better. Fabricated certainty is responsible for all the bad in the world, and all the good, in essence. Maybe not all the good, but a lot of what we think of as good. But let's not say that's good enough, right? If we say that's good enough, we're saying that sexual slavery is, sex trade is good enough, right? It's all fine. It's not. And I do this too, this resisting looking at feedback that we don't think we want exactly. I mean, we understand, we've all felt this. And I discover this stuff by looking, at myself first and foremost, right? So I'm never, as I say, coming from any kind of pedestal. This concept of fabricated certainty defines that behavior of our minds very well. Don't go there, your mind will say. That's when you need to start digging in, right? Any kind of bad is a red flag. Including, right, if you feel like you're afraid to do something that's pretty obviously something that would be helpful, right? Get feedback that would, potentially be helpful. If you feel like you're afraid of the pain that your own mind is going to give you, right? That happens a lot if we know to look for it, right? We're afraid of our own mind making us feel bad about something. If that's going on, then there's probably fabricated certainty that's being protected. Probably. I mean, no matter what, I think it's normal and not bad to not want to watch someone get tortured, for example. So what I mean by that is I'm giving you that as a counterexample where it's not like everything that we don't want to look at is just because we have a problem with our thinking, right? Like I don't want to look at someone being hurt, right? However, if that was interfering with me helping them, then that would be a problem. Right, and if it was important for me to help them, right, then it would be a problem. So if there's something that if there's something interfering with you getting somewhere that you probably need to get to, then look for the fabricating certainty protecting it. But there's some things you might not want to look at just because there's no benefit. It's just a drawback, you know. Yeah, I need to do this a little bit stream of consciousness. Otherwise, the opposite of that would be writing out an entire script for the entire webinar, which would be infeasible. And because this is so out of the box, then you know, it's a different thing to try to explain things that are within the frame that people already have. Trust me, I can explain them. I'm not like terrible at explaining stuff and teaching, and overall, it's just this one topic, this overall topic of law of implication is a different bear to explain. I was getting to a dating example. Yeah, I got to that, right? The dating, if you another example of a foothold to help just see all this is look at all the ways that fabricated certainty comes into play with the dating game, and it'll just that one lens of it or way of looking at it will kind of like spraying mist on a bunch of hidden lasers from security, you know, setup. Looking at it in terms of the dating picture. Will probably it'd be like spraying mist on an invisible thing, invisible lasers, where it'll start to really make sense out of this fabricated certainty thing. Yeah, this is going to open up if you use this like almost this itself, that illustration of spraying like a mist on, you know, how it makes like lasers, like invisible security lasers. You can see them if you spray a mist, right? We've seen that probably in movies. This itself, like this idea that we talked about, like it's kind of like a mist. Like you don't look at it itself, you look at it, you know, you look at it in view of other things, and you'll start to make sense out of both that and this. Like this concept will make more sense when you use it, and it'll make sense out of the thing you're using it on as well. Trapped, yeah. Some of these are from an hour ago, so it's relating to stuff. So I didn't refer to our thing. You tell him. We got Michael in here making his usual comments. So is fabricated certainty the antithesis of apotheosis? Apotheosis is like the highest point. It just means like the highest point, the best of. What was the definition that was cut and pasted a while ago up here? Sorry, I'm obviously not getting to many comments today. I need to get to where I'm having more discussion at some point soon, but you can see what I've been doing, right? So I've been using my time, been working on it. Okay, the highest point in the development of something, culmination or climax. I wouldn't say that's the exact opposite of fabricated certainty. The opposite of fabricated certainty, and it's a great thing, it helps us see it, would be a constructed certainty where first, irrelevant of any feeling, using a correct method of knowing that's foolproof, somewhat metaphorical to clicking on a link and seeing a web page come up to see whether a link works. That's not a perfect metaphor, but it starts to get there. We find some way, or walking outside and really getting a sense what the weather is. There's a way that ultimately breaks down as a metaphor, but it starts to illustrate. We find a way to get correct knowledge. And see, here's what's going to happen is there's so much I have yet to explain, just so you guys know that. There's just only so much at a time. What's going to happen is you're going to get knowledge of kind of overall frames of like general things. Like you can know that God exists. That's not going to tell you how to rank a website or exactly how to make money. But it's going to give you a foothold. It's going to give you a frame. Within that frame, you can figure out scarcity versus abundance and understand abundance. That's going to further give you a frame. When I talk about how business comes down to three things, this is so much more valuable than I even think that people realize, because I'm giving a foothold to people, but they don't realize the value. People don't realize the value of footholds. That's a very powerful phrase that I just said. People do not realize the value of footholds. When as you realize what I mean by a foothold and what the incredible value of it is, similar to a proper foundation or a proper frame, but it's not even exactly a frame necessarily. A foothold, probably a frame is a subset of footholds. But when you realize the value of a foothold, but like a detective realizing the value of an anomalous clue, right? Like every detective story virtually is about an anomalous, like an anomaly, that a thread that's pulled on properly, versus the person who's just trying to fit their trying to do the fabricated certainty thing, right? They develop, they get a little bit of information, or even a lot, then they formulate a theory, and then they try to gain evidence for it, see if things match their expectations by pushing aside and deleting and marginalizing stuff that doesn't fit, and then trying to force the world into that, right? People are like start out open for a little while, and then they develop a theory, and then it's confirmation bias, fabricated certainty, and so forth. And then that's the wrong way to go about solving a mystery, of course. And the right way is you pull on the smallest thread and you do it. And again, Jesus went over, constantly talked about this. When Jesus talked about belief and faith, I'm quite certain, whatever that's worth, that this is what he's talking about, this foothold thing. It's the secret to everything, is that you're able to get to so much, including total goodness. The cracks are there, the littlest, but you have to give full weight to the littlest foothold. The littlest crack, the littlest clue is going to lead everywhere. But you need a process that can take advantage of the littlest clues, the littlest crack. A process like that, the usual process marginalizes and deletes these little anomalies, because they mess with existing certainty, you see, including with money, including with getting clients, with everything. As soon as you're able to ignore the whole pursuit of fabricated certainty, it keeps you on a treadmill forever. Everything is so easy when you're not trying to fabricate and protect certainty. It's not even that every result is like you get right away, but what I mean, there's not the internal conflict. It's just not confusing, right? No matter how long it takes to get clients, if you're not trying to fabricate, if you're not trying to get them for approval, then you're only trying to get them to like feed yourself, right, and stay alive. And so then you just realize, okay, wait, I'm just trying to feed myself. I do whatever it takes to feed myself, and then there's no urgency, right? And you just follow these things. That's how you create breakthroughs. See, people don't have enough creative tension. I want to treat this in a whole separate webinar, but people don't build up the right amount of creative tension to really have a breakthrough. Why do people never even figure out what I'm talking about here? Even the question itself, people don't get it right. People don't realize that it comes down to how to know what's true, right? This all relates to that question of epistemology. Why don't people realize that whatever they're trying to achieve in life, their bottleneck is epistemology, their way of thinking properly, how to know what's true? Why don't people get there? They don't get there because they dissipate their creative tension. If you kept pulling on any thread in life, if you really were trying to get to any result, if you really loved any person really enough, you would come to the same conclusion every time, which is, wow, I need to figure out how to know what's true. I need to figure out the answer to the question of epistemology. Every thread leads to that. Everything, every question, every goal, any love for any person leads to that same question. Why are people not having that breakthrough? It's because they dissipate their creative tension by having this, and I still need to do more justice next time to showing you why and how our brain is doing this, but I gave you an indication. But I want you to see more why it's doing it the way it's doing it, if it has the wrongness to it. Regardless of your religion, I'm fascinated by the reported historical incident where Jesus said that he was basically going to be killed, and Peter said, no, God, no, we'll protect you, or I'm paraphrasing, and the reply is so wacky, given our normal paradigm, our normal way of looking at things, that it's fascinating to me. Because who on earth would think that a reply to, like, I'm going to, get something like I'm going to get arrested, and then Peter saying, no, God, Jesus. I don't have to assume in this audience that Jesus has got. This is just a reported historical incident regardless, right? Jesus was a historical figure. And then this historical figure with the personality that he basically had said something totally what seems out of left field. He said, "Get behind me, Satan." Can you imagine if you had a friend and you said to the friend, these people are going to attack me, and the friend said, no, I'll defend you. do you think you would reply to your friend, "Get behind me, Satan"? No, right? So, and we don't like, unless Jesus was totally off his rocker, he was saying something profound because it's so unexpected. This is an illustration of the smallest threat. People delete and marginalize that statement by Jesus. They don't really think about it much. Why? It's just, but it's such a clue because it's so unexpected if you think about it. It's expected if we just read it first and then just already know it says that and we can regurgitate it. But if you stop and think about it in a vacuum, what you would think that Jesus would say, that's just beyond, like not crazy, but like it's such an anomaly. It's like a clue. But what was it? Peter had this certainty. But Peter believed, and again, I'm not assuming anyone's religion here when I say this. This is relevant no matter what your supposed religion is, right? None of what I talk about has any, it all gets beneath belief. Beliefs are irrelevant. Beliefs are fabricated certainty, or they're arrived at properly. If they're arrived at properly, they're correct, and then whatever I say won't conflict with them because they're correct, right? And if it does, then you can inform me if I'm incorrect and you have a correct understanding. But then otherwise, beliefs are just fabricated certainty, right? They're either knowably correct or they're fabricated certainty, so they're not relevant for what I'm talking about. But Paul believed that Jesus was God, or at least the close enough equivalent, right? Paul believed something real close to God, Jesus was God. Certainly he believed that Jesus was his godly teacher, and something major, the Messiah and all that. So Jesus said, this is going to happen. This needs to happen. They said it like it needs to happen. And Paul objected. So Paul did that thing like with speed reading, where Paul felt like his opinion in the spur of the moment on the situation was equivalent to God's statement about it. So Paul was putting credence, assigning value to fabricated certainty, and Jesus referred to that as Satan. Interesting, huh? Because that's the only thing Paul could be doing wrong there. Otherwise, what he was doing was the most normal, acceptable thing in the world, right? And again, you would never in a million years think to say to your friend, "Get behind me, Satan." And your friend would think you were really weird if you said that, right? If you said, "This needs to happen to me, this bad thing needs to happen to me," and your friend was like, "No, I'll help protect you," right? But Jesus, who if you think Jesus was God, then he was sane, right? Or if you think that Jesus was simply not insane, but in any way was a smart guy, or even a non-crazy guy. If you think that Jesus was even a normal person, then if a normal person said, "Get behind me, Satan," then it made any kind of sense, right? So fascinating. So the only thing Paul could be doing wrong was giving credence, giving value to his fabricated certainty. And Jesus didn't say, "No, Paul, that's a little bit wrong." Paul was like, "That's the root of all evil," is basically what Jesus said, right there. And that's, again, what I'm saying, in essence, is the root of all evil is giving any value at all to fabricated certainty. And then, and when I say the root of all evil, I mean you're hurting yourself, right? In a million ways. All right, excellent. 2 hours ago. Oh, we're way back to the beginning. Okay. This is about as spicy as this webinar. That's awesome. All bad comes from this, mind blown. Excellent. Yeah, very true. Well, that's a different take. Yeah. Facebook makes me misclick all the time. All right, this part isn't going to be so exciting maybe for the MP3. Although you stick with it, you never know what rant's going to come, right? 15 minutes ago. There is always a better way. Excellent. Yeah. There's always a better way if there's bad, right? Bad is unnecessary ultimately. It only seems necessary as part of the protecting fabricated certainty and making fabricated certainty seem good enough. In order to think, right, it's all part of the same paradigm and protecting itself. Oh, that bad, that's normal. That has to be. So we accept it. Right? Oh, creative tension with the building roads, right? There's another, and this creative tension thing is going to be nuts for you as I more fully explain it. And maybe from what I've said, I've given you enough that you can use it. But by not letting things dissipate your creative tension by going for, oh, I got this result. Oh, I just need to see a win, right? Some form of I need to see progress. I need to see a win. Well, if you need to see progress of the wrong, of what seems like the right sort, but is ultimately the wrong sort, or if you need a win, that actually dissipates your creative tension if you get it, right? Better to still see the differential between where you're at and where you want to get to and not dissipate that until you really break through. You don't want to like feel like you're making progress breaking through. You either break through or you don't, right? Like if you're getting closer to a breakthrough, you might say, well, that'll motivate me more. Well, get motivated by the fact you need the breakthrough. That should be enough motivation. And then don't dissipate that by feeling like a false sense of progress. You don't need to feel progress at all. Just seek understanding. You either just identify, see another thing that you're running into, and there's a thing I've discovered recently, which is another major thing I have to share with you in this series, is the whole idea of setting goals contains a mistaken assumption. There's one ultimate purpose or goal, which is no bad, and then goodness, more increasing goodness for yourself and everyone. Everything else, including that, actually all of them, all goals fall into the following category. You need to reveal them, not set them. Setting goals, the whole concept of setting goals, is an example of fabricating certainty. Think about it. You set the goal, you fiat the goal, you just say, here's the goal. Now you say, well, David, what about stipulating a goal? Well, that's different. When you stipulate, you're not fabricating certainty, and it's still, all you're doing is picking something within a circle. You've discovered the goal has to be within this realm. Like, for example, that you can have a sense of how much money you need in a certain time frame. Okay, some sense of it, and then you pick something within it. At some point, you pick randomly. I've said, like, if you can't tell the difference between different choices, then just pick randomly and move along. Right? And that's what I mean. Don't fabricate certainty. Just pick randomly, or stipulate, or stipulate. You pick randomly, then you stipulate. You say, all right, I'll pick. I can't tell exactly how much money I need, but I'll pick something reasonable, $20,000 a month or $3 million total, or I'll get to $20,000 a month and I'll go from there. But wait, if I'm going to get to $20,000 a month, probably 10, so maybe I'll go for 10. Or maybe I don't go for anything. Maybe I don't need that at all. Maybe that's just a way of fabricating certainty. Maybe instead I just need to. If I can get to $20,000 a month, that means I can get clients. If I can get clients, it means I'm getting clients for, say, ranking a website. It could be something else, but say it's ranking a website. If I can rank a website, then I can rank a website. So how about I go for ranking a website? You know, or how about I go for ranking a website and starting to talk to people and meet them? Remember, the smallest thread, right? You build on uncertainty, and you go to understand. If you go in business situations and you're just looking to understand people and their needs, then first of all, you'll waste less time with people that aren't good prospects for what you have to sell. A lot of why people think they're bad at conversion is like thinking you're bad at fishing for fishing in the wrong pond. Well, that is being bad at fishing in one sense, but so much of being bad at conversion is either having not a good enough product or service, or not fishing in the right pond. In other words, you might have a traffic problem or a product problem, not a conversion problem. Get traffic, get the pond straight, and get the product straight, or the service, and then worry about conversion. Generally speaking, unless you just go straight after conversion and it works, right? But boy, oh man, like people that are struggling, I'm really close to showing you how to stop, like with OMG. Like with whatever it is, with OMG, stick with me for a little while longer, and you'll get it, and you'll see what I mean. You'll see about building on footholds and getting out of this treadmill, and you're not, like, there's no struggle. Struggling is BS. It's all in that paradigm. And it's not struggle versus easy. It's struggle versus, again, the struggle is just what's difficult is to fabricate and protect BS certainty. It's easy to seek and gain understanding. It's not hard. And if you do that, you'll make more and more progress. And there you go. Then that's why life is easy. I'm not saying it's easy to make $1 billion company, so I'll do it tomorrow. But fundamentally, it's easy if I was motivated. But that goal hasn't revealed itself to me as a goal that I want to go after. Right? Again, goal setting, fascinating. So now we know anyone who's talking about goal setting, they're fundamentally in the wrong paradigm. Including myself before I discovered this. You reveal goals. Goals reveal themselves. You will, and you don't need to be in a rush. What's revealed itself has revealed itself to you. What you're clear on is clear, and then you'll get clarity by building on clarity. You'll get more by building on real footholds, by pulling on a real thread. If you're pulling on a thread and you're like, oh, I'm not getting enough fast enough. No, that's because if you feel that way, you're assigning value. You're thinking that you might get what you want through fabricated certainty. That's always going to seem easier and quicker, or either always or often, or reliably going to seem easier and quicker. You need to stop thinking that there's some other way to solve the crime or to achieve the goal or to succeed in life besides building properly on the right footholds and going from there. Robert said, wow, I'm listening, focusing, thinking, processing, and want to say and ask so much I'm actually speechless. In other words, that's great. Yeah, there's so much I want to tell you at once. It's always my issue, too. So I feel the same way in terms of talking. That's why I keep talking. But you know, well, we just keep going, right? It's the same thing. The only problem that you and I would have right now is that we're not fabricating certainty fast enough, right? But if you go back and look at how I do things, and because I've done this very effectively for a long time, maybe not perfectly, but pretty effectively, relatively speaking, at least, is I keep up the creative tension, right? The number one thing we don't want is closure, right? You listen to alchemy, you'll have creative tension. People feel like that's wrong, and that it needs to be dissipated faster, right? That you need to get, you know, your carrot faster, your reward, your sticker, right, or whatever. But those are actually counterproductive. You want to keep the creative tension up. I never slow roll things. I'm always trying to get you to the actual breakthrough, the actual clarity and understanding as fast as possible. Just so you know, I'm never ever doing something slow just for effect. I'm never at all. I'm always trying to tell you as fast as possible everything that I can. So never am I holding back. But what seems like it might be going slow sometimes or frustrating is that I'm not looking to give you fabricated certainty, the false sugar, you know, the thing. It seems like we need to reframe uncertainty as an invaluable resource rather than a muddled and shaky space that we should avoid. Right. What you want to do regarding uncertainty is let it in a sense, okay. Your foothold is still going to be things that are clear. And no matter what, you have one piece of clarity, which is that you want goodness for yourself, or at least you need to at least ask about what's goodness, or how do I know what's true. If you have no other foothold in life, you have that. The question of epistemology is your beginning, if you have no other beginning. How do I know what's true? How do I be happy? Whatever. That's enough. As long as you can keep breathing and feeding yourself and keep, you know, roof over your head while you're working on that, then you're fine. That's all the foothold you need. Again, people that feel like they need more of a foothold, the foothold they have isn't good enough. That's the road to ruin. They reject that clue isn't good enough. That anomaly is not big enough. That crack isn't wide enough. That's the fundamental failure thing. It's not giving up isn't the problem. It's not having motivation or not persevering. The fundamental antithesis to success, the fundamental problem with success is what I have isn't enough to start. Or, you know, I can't be a good servant to a bad master before being a good servant to a good master. Okay? So that's the fundamental objection that's wrong. And it would be someone's fundamental objection to me is I'm not giving you enough closure fast enough. And I'm always trying, by the way, right? But we'll understand what we understand, and it'll happen in your own time, and I'll do my best, and you'll do your best. But the way you do your best is evaluate what you do have. How is scarcity related to God? That's interesting to me. I'll look to address that probably in the future. But great question, super question. But I don't think I'll forget about that. There's a few more logical steps, like to understand. You have to understand the nature of God, and that God's not screwing up, and that God could create like a total bliss for everyone. And since God's not doing that, it means God's doing something even better than that. And then we can understand that that's because of love, which you need free will in order to have love, so you can not only have bliss for yourself, but care about others and have them have goodness too. And that's even better than just goodness in a vacuum without caring and love. And that's the situation God's created. There's not a fundamental scarcity. That would be a hellish thing, you know, where I have to squabble over a limited supply of good stuff and everything breaks down. Perhaps you could prove like a lack of scarcity without that, but that's how you can get there, maybe in a number of ways, but that's one way to get to it. And knowing that God exists is just an important building block in general, right? We need to look at overall frames for things, like the greater frames for what's going on are important. And you never know what's going to be important, so that's one of the ones that has a lot of potential for it. Completely fascinated by your look on creative tension, and you should be. That's great, Leslie. Exactly, and that's going to be one of the things you can use immediately, in addition to this huge thing that I talked about with the overall point of this webinar. But I take advantage of this all the time. Even something as simple as I like to, for example, play computer games, strategy games and stuff, to have fun rather than try to have fun within my work. What I mean by that is, like, people will think when they people will create drama and do all sorts of like kind of pointless and counterproductive things and think they're working, and they're just kind of entertaining themselves. So I like to entertain myself where it doesn't look like I'm working. It doesn't look like I'm accomplishing something outside of the frame that the computer game. It's still plenty fun, because within the frame of the computer game, which I can get into, then it's totally valuable and fun, right? So when you can navigate frames, you can totally enjoy a game, totally get immersed, and then also totally step out of it as well. But then I don't think that I'm working when I'm not, and so that's helpful, because then I don't people do all sorts of stuff that they call working when they're not, and then that if you understand what I mean with creative tension, it kind of and then people equate the amount that they work as like they're making progress, right? Like because in school the amount of effort you put in is supposed to help your grade. So then, and school teaches us all sorts of bad frames. And so then people become entrepreneurs, but they still think like a school child or like an employee. Nothing wrong with being an employee, but the frame is not a good one to take with you into, and the frame of being an employee is similar to a school, that it's training to be an employee, right, or a factory worker or whatever. So the frame in school is horrible for becoming an entrepreneur. And then in school you're supposed to get graded like, oh, school is all fabricated certainty, top to bottom. It's all basically a scam, right? How amazing is it? And then people go to learn from me, and they want that same BS, as I've talked about. Like, can you imagine what a scam it is? Teachers teach, and then they give a test that they themselves make, and then they assign a grade based on how well you do on a test that they themselves make. So it's all one big circular BS. None of it helps you trade anything with someone else, which is how you make money, right? And it's not even just how you make money; it's how you interact socially, to a large degree, including being able to not trade sometimes and just operate out of love. But understanding trading, which means understanding value. School, there's no value. It's all BS value. It's all fabricated value. And so people come into being an entrepreneur, and they have no idea what actual value is. They think that value is what the teacher says it is. They think that value, can just be created, out of approval or whatever. So people will think that effort equates to an A without even realizing it. Again, this is invisible to them because it's so pervasive in school. And then they'll think that, of course, how much time they spend working is related to effort, and then effort is supposed to get them results. And so they say, I've worked and worked and worked, where's my result? But when you're an entrepreneur, it has nothing to do with you put effort in and you get a result. What the hell? That's moronic. You need to have creative breakthroughs. You need to, you need to create value, and you trade that value. And you're going to get paid by trading value, by creating and trading value. And it's value in the other person's mind, like Adrian Morrison talked about on that Thursday a few weeks ago. Right? It's not value in your own head, it's value in their head. Whatever they think is valuable is valuable. And that, it's a little bit like a teacher in that one way. But it has nothing, you don't get paid for effort. Just like, again, that's just the same circular BS treadmill of fabricated value. You're not supposed to get, you don't deserve to get a client just because you've done some technique that's supposed to work 600 times. When Cotton was doing a Q&A, it gave me creative tension to do this. he was great. He was helping people fully. I just mean hearing people's questions, and the questions weren't wrong or bad, but they just needed my help, in addition to other help from Cotton and others. And in some cases, it's enough to get help by other people. But you do the same thing 600 times, or even different things 600 times, you don't get paid for effort, and there's no point at which you deserve to have a result. And there's no point at which getting a result should give you more certainty. It's you want to keep doing things from different angles because that's going to gain understanding. You don't relatively speaking, are you going to gain more understanding by looking at something from a different angle, or trying something a different way, or saying something different to clients, or by doing it the same way over and over? Right? Generally speaking, doing things a different way. Maybe trying enough of the same way to get a good look, right? But when your goal is to understand, then you're always making progress. Every time you mix your perspective or a different angle with something, you're giving yourself more of an understanding, and then you're making progress, and that's how you look for progress. Regarding creative tension, though, what is creative tension? Creative tension is like the power that helps you break through. So what you do is you look first. You have a goal reveal itself. A target, something you want to hit, reveals itself. And it reveals itself by it's going to help you by you achieve it, and you've thought correctly somehow, and by correct thinking you've revealed something. You've pulled on a thread, and so forth. A goal reveals itself, or a general target reveals itself, and you just pick a stipulated goal that fits within that range. Such as you want a client to say yes, or at least you want to talk to someone who could be a potential client, right? Or you want to rank a website, whatever. So that would be a goal. Then there's something in between you and achieving that goal. Now, by the way, there might not be. The first thing I generally try is I try to just go and see if I can just achieve it, right, with what I already have. Either it's obvious I can't, or maybe I can, and then I'll just see if I can reach out and grab it, right? So you can certainly, the first time you talk to a client, you can just go talk to him and see how that works out. Now, you're not doing it to validate yourself, and if it does work out, then great. That doesn't mean you have certainty, but maybe it certainly means that it's possible that what you already can do is enough. And then either that keeps working, or you run into issues when you start talking to other people, and then you might need to have a breakthrough, right? If there's no bottleneck, you don't need a breakthrough, right? That means, and you can just achieve your goal. You don't need anyone's help. You'll just achieve it. If you're struggling or not getting or regardless whether you're struggling, if you reach out and try to get your goal, you try to get a client, doesn't happen, then there's obviously a bottleneck of some sort, right? Or an obstacle, something in the way that you have to break through. So you need a breakthrough, and then you need to identify that. Strangely enough, even though when I say this it makes sense, people very commonly don't think in terms of bottlenecks. They think in terms of other stuff, because the whole process of fabricating certainty doesn't really involve bottlenecks. It involves trying to pretend they don't exist and so forth. That's why it's constantly a revelation, even though it's obvious when you look at it the right way, that the way to achieve goals is either you just achieve it, and it's easy, or you have a bottleneck and then you break it. To break a bottleneck, you need to have a breakthrough. And in order to do that, what powers it is creative tension. And what that is you look at where you want to get to. You look at what the world would look like if you didn't have that bottleneck. So for example, maybe you say, well, my first bottleneck that I can identify is no one's talking to me who's interested in my potentially interested in my services. So the way what the world would look like if that was broken would be that a whole bunch of people were talking to you who potentially wanted a service. Now let's say you broke, so that's the way it looks like, and then you look at how things are and no one's talking to you. And then you have creative tension to break that bottleneck, right? And you, on the way to that, you might identify a sub-bottleneck or you may not, right? And then you can break that one. But what you don't need to do is convince yourself you're making progress. You just need to focus on what the world is going to look like once it's broken and understand what's going on now and just keep understanding, which means keep trying stuff, looking at it, learning one way or the other. You're just gaining understanding, right? Even the simplistic idea of gaining understanding is a good start, and that's your foothold, and you can get better at understanding, seeking understanding, right? It's again, it's marginalizing footholds can be a block for people. When I talk about understanding, seeking understanding, whatever you get from that, especially once you know to contrast it with the false feeling of certainty, that block. But whatever you get from it's enough, and by pursuing whatever you do get from it, you'll understand the process of seeking understanding better. But basically, you keep seeking understanding, you keep building resources, you keep building up until you break through that bottleneck. And I do this routinely, even with trying to figure out an email, right? Okay, what are we trying to achieve with the email? And then I just start looking around for what we have, and then if it's not good enough, then I acknowledge it. I'm like, no, this isn't good enough. This doesn't have the right kick, doesn't have a good storyline, it's cliche. And I acknowledge that. To other people, that sounds negative. To me, acknowledging reality and seeing that we're not where we need to be and delving into how we're not where we need to be, that builds creative tension. That's good. Often what people want to do is convince themselves they're close. But if you convince yourself you're close, that dissipates creative tension. Instead, you want to look at how you want to see more and more how you're not where you want to be, and then build up what's actually useful, which is understanding. And when you're building understanding, you're going to build building blocks. You're going to build resources while you're doing it. Don't worry about that. Or when I say don't fret about that. Come to understand that you will. And if you don't understand that, you'll build building blocks and resources and relationships with people while you're building understanding. Like if someone says, well, how am I going to make the sale if I'm just trying to understand myself, my product, and the person I'm trying to sell to? Like, trust me, you'll be making the best progress possible towards your sale if you understand your product, yourself, and the other person. Right? That's not going to be counterproductive. It's going to be as productive as possible. Oh, or just how the mind works, which is all related, how sales works, right? All that, right? You keep understanding that stuff, and you'll make the sale. You see. So build understanding, but convincing yourself that you're already great at conversion, or that all these people are so close to saying yes, or I'm getting there. That's not going to help. That's only going to demotivate you, weirdly enough. Or you're very welcome, Bryce. Thanks for the web. You needed it today. Well, everyone needs this all the time. Believe me, this bottleneck, this thing I'm talking about with assigning value to fabricated certainty. This is all the time, everywhere going on for you guys, everyone. It helps myself not mess this up. This is nuts, and I didn't explain it. This is in all of what I've been saying, but I didn't know to explicitly realize it and say it until now. But this is the stuff. I'm saying a lot of words here. Once in a while, I'll lose my train of thought and so forth. But it's the thing. Again, it's not about feeling it yet, but this is going to break through to everything. We got it. This is, as I said, the apotheosis. Got pages of notes, yeah. That's good. Apotheosis needs patience, yes. Exactly, but patience is once again easy when we're not trying to fabricate certainty, right? Impatience is related to the feeling, to wanting to see progress. Right? You can reframe seeing progress to building understanding. Love this talk, insights. We're able to join so many dots you've been experiencing during your entrepreneur's journey. Yeah. Thanks, David, for your exceptional way of teaching this stuff. Is there one thing that you decided to master in your personal development life the most? Well, epistemology, I would have to say, right? Yeah. I was just going to continue a specific time each week. The only issue I would, but I need to play it a little bit by ear still because Joe's going to be doing some nice hot seats. Steven's going to do some e-commerce Q&A and webinars. We have some other stuff, maybe some stuff on business law. I have a good person for that, just to help you out. And so I need to check on the scheduling. But I'll talk to you more about this, don't worry. Ha ha ha! I mean, this takes long. She knows me for the duration dinner, David. That's great, Leslie. This is key to permanent learning. The creative tension developed in your way of covering the ideas through multiple interconnected examples seem to enliven vast areas of your brains. Oh, like I'm stimulating, yeah, a lot of stuff, right? Yeah, and I want to really continue to make sure that we look at creative tension in a way from different angles and so you see it. I also want to talk to you about what it means to see stuff. Very interesting. It's not what we think. Don't don't even get me started on the education topic. That's awesome. Yeah. Entrepreneurs don't get paid for effort. Right, exactly. Got to have the breakthrough with value. And again, oh, remember, your foothold, your frame within which, but this frame really narrows things down for you. Product, conversion, traffic. And if you go for conversion and you're having issues, then probably make sure you have your traffic and your product straight, including like in my client getting series that I have that I recorded to help you guys out last year. Have a clear idea of what you're going to do after a client says yes, like really clear, and so you can communicate that, or at least know it's there and it'll come across. Some more clarity about your product, you know, not just that you can rank a website, but exactly what steps you're going to take after they say yes. Then that breeds confidence, right? Let me remind you, with client getting, a bottleneck that a lot of people are going to have as the years go by, year after year, the bottleneck is going to be less that businesses don't know about SEO, and that or that they can't find someone to say they can do SEO. The bottleneck is going to be finding someone competent and that they can trust to be competent to do SEO. And so that's going to be their pain point, right? Is competence, not that you can get them traffic. It's a little bit like with OMG. When we're selling OMG, the problem isn't that our prospects want to make money, right? Our potential members. Like if we say, guess what? We solved your problem. Their real problem is that they feel like they don't know who can competently show them how to make money, right? A prospect for OMG, not that they can't find someone claiming to help them make money. There's plenty of that, but they need competence. They need to be able to trust that the program will like work for them, or whatever that might mean. Even that needs to be a little bit redefined, right? People, but the same thing with clients is they want to be able to not even just that they want to find someone competent. Their problem is they need to feel certainty, which is basically going to be fabricated certainty. Is the only certainty people know. So a lot of conversion is, the more we understand, by the way, the more we can see how fabricated certainty works, the more we can identify it so we don't get caught up in it ourselves in the wrong way. So I'll delve into that with you. And when we do that, that's going to help us with conversion, because this is how other people make decisions. It's fabricated certainty. So it's all going to be pretty great. It's also why I overall find conversion in the overall frame, it's easy. It's difficult in the sense of it involves hitting just the right trigger in real people's minds in a market, which is a lot of science and discovery. You can't just theoretically figure out what's going to work for people and trigger the buying thing, exactly, like specifically, but have the overall frame down for conversion. So I always get there. Knowing God exists, he could cause completely good stuff, but doesn't. Why? Because something must be more important. Yeah. This is an amazing webinar. Yeah, exactly. So this is the path then. Yeah, read what Fletcher wrote. He really summarized it well. Or if you're on an MP3, you have to watch the video at this point to do it. Excellent. Thank you. I'm glad you love that, Leslie. So regarding setting and achieving goals, so there's no point of writing down a few ultimate goals. Okay, there might be a point if the goals that you're writing down on a goal card happen to also be goals that are helpful. So if you write goals down, and if you imagine how nice you'd feel after you'd achieve those goals, that's going to make it more likely that you'll achieve those goals. But the thing about revealing goals, and see, you might have revealed, you might be doing a proper process to some degree, like the goals you're like. Basically, right now, revealing a goal for yourself and setting it look identical. The same way that correctly arrived at certainty looks the same as fabricated certainty to people. They can't tell the difference. What you want to do is start to look at what's the difference between fabricating certainty about a goal and discovering a goal that you're really going to use. as a building block, as a jumping off point, as a breaking a bottleneck to another thing. You see, if you arrive at a goal by revealing how it's genuinely going to be helpful for you and you can really see it and feel it, then your motivation and even often a bit of the plan to get there is going to be more consistent. And it's going to be rock solid in a different way because you've revealed something correct. Fabricated certainty needs to be fed and protected. It's fragile. Same thing with a goal that's set in a way that's fabricated, that's arbitrarily just dictated. You need to pour resource into like motivating yourself and protecting it. You see, when you reveal it in the right way, then it maintains itself with no effort. Understanding doesn't have to be protected and doesn't have to be, you don't have to pour resources into upholding it and upkeeping it. It doesn't erode, right? The fundamental thing about getting epistemology right is you can develop a confidence that doesn't erode. You can develop knowledge that doesn't erode. See, people's certainty is constantly eroding. When I'm doing things right, mine isn't. Right, so I don't need to pour and I don't need to protect. I don't need to be touchy. It's an incredible way to live when your confidence is not eroding by default. When your confidence is fabricated, again, think of this in terms of dating. If your confidence is fabricated, then it's constantly eroding, and you constantly need more validation. When your confidence it comes from something that's revealed, with dating. It's really, again, it's not complicated once you get rid of once you stop looking at the wrong thing. People think in terms of being fundamentally attractive or not, like in a vacuum. Really, dating, a relationship comes down to a match between two people or an interaction, a relationship between two people. So you're looking for the interaction. You're looking for a relationship between you and someone else that's also based on a chemistry between you and someone else, and also based on you need to have chemistry. This is weirdly this is parallel to a goal achieving process. To achieve a goal, you need a motivation for it. There needs to be a reason why you want the goal in the first place, right? Real or imagined, preferably real. And then you need to be able to break bottlenecks on the way to it. How do you? What makes a relationship work effortlessly and reliably? It's the same process. You need a battery or an engine or something to launch it, which is a true chemistry between the two of you, not fabricated. Normally, at least from the perspective of guys, but I'm sure girls can fall into the same trap, but just look at it from the guy's perspective, they think that dating is finding girls that are in a gray area regarding attraction, where they could be attracted to them, but might not be yet, and then using their greatness as a man to make that woman get into a white area where they're all attracted to the guy. Well, that's fabricating, and so then you have to keep pouring energy into that. Just like with a goal, that's fabricated. You have to keep pouring resource into maintaining it. If instead you find a girl who's naturally, or by default, attracted to you, you might say who you are is kind of a little bit meaningless, but there's a way that you're going to be by default. A certain body type, a certain personality that's just easy for you to maintain, right? Just realistically speaking, right? There's a kind of way that you are effortlessly. If it's not good enough, then you're working on that anyway, right? When just by us interacting, you're working on that anyway. You're becoming an even more awesome person. But physically, in terms of your preferences, in terms of what you find attractive, you need to find a match between you and someone else, a real match, not just a gray match that you have to try to put effort into maintaining. So you're looking for a real chemical match. Just like a revealed goal. You're looking to reveal it, not fabricate it. When you realize the difference between that, then you find someone that's naturally attracted to you and I'm naturally attracted to them. It's incredible. It feels like it's shocking when it happens, but it's amazing, and then it's effortless, and I achieved this. I found once I knew to look for this, I just found it in 6 months, 13 years ago or so, and it worked. Right? It's been, just like I said, I thought it could be basically effortless and awesome. And we still seem like newlyweds, not because we're all over each other or anything like that, but we just have the same spark and everything. But it's not even, people say you have to work at your marriage. That's actually false. That's based on the idea that it got fabricated in the first place. The chemistry was fabricated. And not fully fabricated, but fabricated enough, right? Partially real, partially fabricated. my wife, for whatever reason, and I'm not saying this, I truly find it amazing, except for the fact that it's just when you realize that it's rare but it happens, then it's different than this idea of, oh, it proves that I'm this God's gift to women. I'm certainly not God's gift to women. I'm basically normal, right? And now I'm normal for a somewhat chubby 43-year-old. Before I was normal for a, but wealthy. But before I was, made no money, but a relatively thinner 20 or 30-year-old. But anyhow, but there's still an overall, basically physical way that I look, and a very small number of women, but there's like 3 billion women, right? Or in your eligible dating pool, there's hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands or whatever number. So one of them is just going to find you attractive, and you're going to have chemistry with them overall, and then you find that, and then you have the battery. This is like revealing a goal, but you're looking to reveal it. And then, but then you're not done. You need to be able to break bottlenecks, and so you need to have a process and system in place to deal with issues. And then if you have both of those, you're all set. So I need to look for and create and unblock both of those things, and I found it, and then happily ever after, effortlessly, within reason. And I'm not only is that helpful for dating, but that's the same way with finding clients, with achieving, and with goal setting. You reveal a goal. Not every goal is going to match you and your situation. For some people, a lot of you can probably get to $100 million pretty easily with what I have to show you. All right, over time. I don't mean like next month. But for others, and including myself, by the way, it's not necessarily a good match to make that much money. But for plenty of people it is. There's goals that are, this will be profound and helpful. I'm glad I got to this. Fascinatingly, you can look at goals and the same way as what I just explained with women or a dating partner, depending on what sex you are and what your preference is, as a dating partner. You're trying to find goals that are right for you, right? Now, that means that there should be enough money for you to, like, if you're treating money like it's important, and nearly all of us do, and I don't mean infinitely important where you need an infinite amount, but some amount of money is very important, and you're acting like it right now, right? Like if you're going to a job, you're acting like it's important enough to spend 40 or 50 hours or 60 hours a week, right? And so on and so forth. And there's all sorts of things, right? Other people really need money, and if you're not giving it to them and you're keeping it for yourself, then a certain amount of money is important to you. And I'm not criticizing that. I'm saying that based on your actions right now, a certain amount of money is important to you. Therefore, some goal that involves making money, if money is important to you, then some goal involving making money is going to be a match for you, as long as you need money. At the point where you have enough, then it may no longer be a match for you, right? But you want to reveal goals that are a match for you. For cotton, it really works to make like $1 million a month. All of us, or nearly all of us, can, at least maybe all of us, can really learn something from him based on that. Some of us might make more than him, but a lot of us might make less. There might be a particularly good match, right? Between some people can find a particularly attractive, like kind of objectively attractive mate, right? For others of us, that isn't in the cards. The natural chemistry match isn't with someone who objectively is like the best looking person in the world, right? Or richest or this or that or the other thing. That's not what the match is. So for some of us, we'll make less money, and that's the match. But whatever it is, it needs to be enough, right? Same thing with dating, same thing. And so you reveal your goals. When you reveal them, including with money and whatever, and you look for the match, and then you look to break bottlenecks, and a method and a process for doing that, then it's really quite streamlined, quite downhill, and it's the same process over and over again. And again, these are all different angles on why life can be easy. Not achieving anything. I'm not saying you can do everything I've done. You can do all sorts of things I haven't done, right? You have advantages, skills, talents, resources that I don't have, and then there's various things that I've done that you won't be able to do. Or it wouldn't be a good match. The cost wouldn't be worth the price. And for some of you, you just can't at all achieve some of the things I've achieved, and vice versa. I can't achieve some of the things you've achieved. Right? I'm not going to win as many Super Bowls as Tom Brady, no matter what. No matter how smart I am and great at achieving goals, that's not in the cards, right? And it's good to accept that. And that's not bad. That's not an excuse, believe me. Plenty of stuff you can achieve, including everyone being happy and good, right? Without just having these random goals that are arbitrary, that don't, like, goals that are wrong for you are not going to reveal themselves to you. When you pursue goals that reveal themselves to you, it's nuts. Like being in a relationship with someone, and some of us are in this relationship like this, by hook or by crook or luck or by design. Some of us are with someone that genuinely finds us very attractive, and we genuinely find them very attractive, right? And I've been married to my wife for like 12 years now, and we both find each other very attractive, as far as I can tell from her end, and I find her very attractive, right? And it's shocking. It's kind of weird to be very attracted to your wife. I know that might sound strange, like, but I mean, it's not like in our culture to be like super attracted to our wife. Like usually when people are like really attracted to someone, like in a movie or a thing, it's someone that they're not dating, right? Or that they're dating but it's new or something like that. You don't normally see people that have been, together for 10 years dramatized as extremely attractive. It's constantly someone they just met or they can't have. But then anyway, when it reveals itself, then it's pretty easy, right? And that, plus, if you can break bottlenecks, it's not enough. You need to, be able to get things back on track, if they're off track and so forth. Okay. Might be perfectly plausible and perfectly achievable, but it's not normal. As far as it's just in terms of facts on the ground, in terms of people. Sorry, it might be. I don't have my opinion on the matter is not greater than yours in this case. But anyway, hardly matters. Okay. I think this is probably a good time to wrap it up. We've been going for 3 hours, and then we will just continue together. And of course, I gave you, again, stuff to build with, right? Again, not closure, not fabricated closure, not fabricated certainty. That's what's lacking. That's what, if there seems to be something different about what we're doing, or maybe something that's missing that it feels like it should be there, it's now you can identify it. It's the fabricated certainty that's not there. I'm also, of course, limited by the fact that I'm not all-knowing, so I don't know the exact words that would, on average, be best for everybody. But if you're looking for footholds, and if you're looking to be breaking bottlenecks and seeing things we haven't seen before, then you've gotten that in spades. So we're successful for that. David, that kind of was too funny. It's great that you're still attracted to him. But no, I'm attracted, but I'm like really attracted to him. Like the same as, you see in the sitcom where this like hot girl walks by that wouldn't even talk to the guy. Like I feel like it's shocking that my wife would even talk to me. Not, of course, in one sense, it's not shocking at all. I get that she's my wife and she wants, but I can totally see the perspective. It's like a split screen where I can totally feel like the guy in the sitcom that has the, like 2.5 Men or any sitcom. What's the one I like we're watching these days? Big Bang Theory, right? The hot girl that wouldn't even talk to you, shouldn't even be talking to you or whatever. And then, you're married and you're just like, what the heck? It's like a very strange dissonance. I don't know that she feels quite that way, but she likes me. To her, it's kind of different. It's kind of like being a fish in water where I'm just the guy she's attracted to. It's kind of with women, sometimes it's different. But it's certainly funny. Definitely, it's not the common experience of women to feel the way that my wife feels about me. But if I needed, if my, anyway, getting outside the certainty game just opens up a whole world of things are different. Thank you. I appreciate that you thought it was an awesome webinar. Appreciate the appreciation. I'm happy to. I'm glad we got through this. And as always, we made progress. We looked at a very important thing from different angles, and we will continue. I'm so glad that you're glad you came on, Shelley. Wonderful. You're very welcome. Yeah, I'm glad you're alive, too. It's so nice to have the energy of people alive. Appreciate it. A lot of people still on, too. You're welcome, Suleiman. I want to hear your thing. Jeremy told me that you boiled things down where you could explain it well, and I'm also be curious about how that relates to what we talked about this time. Maybe that'll help even further. But I'm hopefully come out a little bit of my cocoon at this point. I've been, for a number of reasons, been kind of had my head down, but it's part of the creative tension thing. That's how I do it. But then the breakthrough comes. So there you go. It always seems wrong. You wouldn't believe how wrong I seem to myself and everyone else. Or not everyone. Mike is particularly good at not feeling like I'm wrong when I do the creative tension thing, but it seems wrong constantly. It's amazing. If it seems really wrong, it's an indication you're doing it right. Not maintaining creative tension and not finding ways to dissipate it and have kind of a false sense of progress. Thank you. Thanks, Renee. That's very nice. Excellent. And yeah, of course, I didn't try to draw it the way that I pretty much got on here right when I had it for you. So again, I'm always trying to get this to you as soon as I can. Never trying to slow roll things. The slowness is the only option. Best I can. All right, guys. Awesome. Great. Yeah, it really will be. And as you pull on this thread, everything will unravel. Like this is the foothold you need for sure. The fabricated certainty is going to be the key to everything. Or kind of the final, the last kind of key, the apotheosis. And we'll explore it, and I'll explore it all. By next week, I'll probably think of a whole bunch of things I wish I had said already. Be like, oh man. But that's how it works. It gets started and it keeps going. You're very welcome.